Good evening, everyone. I call this regular meeting of the Los Gatos Town Council to order on February 17th, 2025. Town Clerk, can we have a roll?
Councilmember Rennie?
Here.
Councilmember Hudas?
Here.
Councilmember Badami?
Here.
Vice Mayor Risto?
Here.
Mayor Moore?
Here. Thank you. To kick us off this evening, Councilmember Mary Badami will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. This evening, we have two brief presentations for our Business of the Month and our Resident of the Month. So I will come down and recognize our folks who are here. All right, first we have Margaret Smith of Domus. Okay. Margaret is very well known in the community, as is Domus. And so I first want to say congratulations to Margaret and the entire Domus team on being named Los Gatos' Business of the Month. I really believe this recognition reflects the care, creativity, and heart that you and your store bring to the community every day. Domus is a true downtown destination, and we're so fortunate to have Domus back. You offer thousands of unique kitchen and home decor treasures, and beyond that, your commitment to Los Gatos shines through in your generosity to local nonprofits. And one of the things that I think is really important about Domus is that it's a brick and mortar presence in the downtown that I think really anchors our community. So we're very, very grateful to you, and so I have this recognition for you, and if you'd like to say a few words, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Town Council. And actually, thank you, Domus residents, customers. I can't tell you how grateful we are. I have a wonderful staff, and I have wonderful customers. Every day, people compliment us on the store. And I always tell them that we can't be here if they're not here. So we count on the customers to keep our business alive and thriving. And we are generous in our community. We have over 100 nonprofits that we support year in, year out, and we're happy to do so. So we are a true community store. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And as a reminder, Domus is a very fun place to shop, as Margaret always says. Okay, for our Resident of the Month, we have Wendy Riggs. Big congratulations to Wendy Riggs on being named our Resident of the Month. This recognition reflects the meaningful impact that you make every day on our schools and our community beyond through Safe Routes to Schools. By encouraging safe alternative transportation for our students, you help reduce traffic congestion, improve safety, and promote healthy habits that last a lifetime, which I think is truly a very meaningful thing. One of the things I particularly want to recognize is the way that you have adapted to the changing environment in our community, you know, from new state laws to a rise in e-bike and e-motorcycle use. You continue to innovate on behalf of our students, and so we're very lucky and grateful to have you serving our community. Thank you very much. If you'd like to say a few words.
Okay, a few, nothing much. Thank you very much, Mayor Moore, and everyone on the town council, assuming you were involved. You said most of you explained what I do, and I think it's kind of sort of almost embarrassing to get an award for doing something I love so much. It's a great job. I really love working with the town of Los Gatos, the Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department, the school districts. I get to spend a lot of time with young kids doing education for just enough time to enjoy it and not so long to be sick of it. So it's very rewarding for me. I raised my kids in this town, and I love the community, and I love being able to give back to the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take a quick picture? I forgot. Thank you very much. All right. All right, we will now move to our consent items. For a reminder, the consent calendar is for items that are considered routine and will be approved in one action. Residents are encouraged and welcome to speak on the consent calendar. Before we move to public comment, are there any council members wanting to pull an item from consent? Okay, seeing none, we have two, maybe three, two speakers thus far. So Karen Yamamoto. I have your card in front. And Karen will be followed by Captain Seuss.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Yamamoto. I live on Benedict Lane. I agree with a lot that has been said by other people about the minutes. I'm kind of concerned about the accuracy of them and how some people have a difficulty time getting their thoughts across. And sometimes it's overwhelming to come up to you guys and speak on it. And it's difficult sometimes to get your full thoughts and your concerns out to you guys. So, and when we do, if you need clarification upon what our concerns are, I wish that you would include them in the minutes for a clarification to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and it's known that you guys are actually keeping the minutes accurate. I know sometimes an individual will get up here and it'll be difficult for them to speak and they might be all over the place, but what they say is important. And there have been some brilliant ideas, but they haven't come off quite as the person was wishing to. So I want to make sure that the minutes are accurate, that the video is accurately representing everybody, and that you're not deleting anything out of there. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on for just 1 second. Clerk, is the timer working now?
Can I ask a quick question though before? Because I did four things. Do I get 3 minutes per each one, or is it all three?
Thank you for the clarifying question. You get 1 3-minute response or public comment during consent. Unless an item gets pulled by a council member, and then you can speak on that item, but you have 3 minutes for the consent calendar.
Okay, that's what okay.
Oh, hold on. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it just already started. But number two, I'd like to poll and correct for transparency reasons. It was a quick meeting on 210. I didn't hear about it. There's let's see. This was regarding North 40. Phase 2, I'm sorry. Motion, Council Member Hudis continued to do this. He tried to pull this, and it's in there, and he got outvoted 3-2. And there was 19 people who spoke. 13 people had concerns of ICE. I had concerns of ICE, but it's not. It doesn't say I. It was just various concerns. It wasn't representing me as a person. And I'm not a public speaker, and somebody just testified to that. Number 3, on February 10th, what happened to the 10-day rule? It was right after the Super Bowl. I missed that meeting. 4 people were here. You said you wished there were more people. I wish that there's other more important things, but you have to give us a 10-day rule, or on special things. I'll speak maybe more on that on verbal. Drainage assessment, 147,000. It's a fraud. There's no leak. I sent you in 4 pictures. I only have so much time. It's to take more than 3 minutes. I really wish you'd pull it. I talked to Mary about it because I don't have the kind of time. Number 7, party zone. I already, that's one of the things that's down my aisle, and you're not prepared for it, but I'm glad that you at least say, hey, but I wanted to know what happens if it goes out, the party, because when you throw a party, it gets bigger and bigger, especially when the World Cup's coming, and I already know it's to get bigger and bigger and bigger outside the zone. I just was wondering what I'm trying to keep the crowd down, but people talk, and when there's parties, what's going to happen if they go outside that zone? And it's a big zone, but you're to get a lot of people because it was like in 1994. You guys weren't ready for it. This one you're not ready for. Please poll some of these correct, especially number 3, because you're throwing away 150. That's a lawsuit. Because I drove by, I have videos. I sent you in pictures, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and I talked to the residents, and what happened was a sewer line broke, and it flooded everything. They fixed the sewer line. There's no drainage problem there, and I lived in the area. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Another thing is on the top. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. And I had one more speaker card, but it's also from Karen Yamamoto, and we just clarified that each speaker only gets to speak on the total consent calendar. Okay, so you are welcome. I'm sorry, I can't make exceptions for speakers to speak on multiple consent items. You are more than welcome to speak on verbal or send us your comments in writing. Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion or, please, to the town attorney or Councilmember Badami?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question for Nicole Burnham. I saw her here earlier in relation to item number 5. If there's a way I could ask a quick question, Mayor, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, please. We can wait.
Thank you, Ms. Burnham, for coming back.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so there's a concern or an eyewitness account that on Loma Street that there's frequently a lot of flooding during the rainy season. And tonight there was an eyewitness report by a speaker that there is no flooding on that street. So is there a problem there? Is there a need to spend $147,000 for a study when there's no problem even tonight, or?
The problem changes. So Nicole Burnham, Director of Parks and Public Works, the issues that happen there happen when there's a high intensity of rainfall. Today's rainfall, luckily, wasn't as intense as it has been in the past. Council may recall that in spring of 2023, you had a number of neighbors from that area come and ask that this be created and that we do an analysis of this area. It is former county pocket. There's no curb and gutter. There is one catch basin. Yes, there's a challenge there, and we've seen it repeatedly. We manage it through maintenance, but that's not a valid long-term solution, unfortunately. So we really need to look at what our other options are, and I can go on forever about hydraulics if you'd like, but it's my favorite topic. But there's lots of reasons. It's a very complicated area that needs some study.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You? Yes, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I wanted to ask a clarifying question of our attorney because there was a comment made about perhaps our video is edited. And for council meetings, I'm not aware of anything ever being deleted unless maybe it was obscene or something crazy happened. Do we have a policy?
No, I'm not aware of any instances in which the town has edited the video. It usually captures the conversation exactly as it was.
Okay, that was my observation. Thank you.
Any other questions on consent? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Yes, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I move to approve items 1 through 10 under consent.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Perfect. We will now move on to verbal communications, which is the time for members of the public to address us on any items that are not listed on the agenda. I have a few speaker cards here, and if there are any others, please fill one out. We will start with Joe Enns and then move to Captain Seuss.
Joe Enns. I wish I could come up with a better title than this, but I care about that creek a lot. And that's what I'm here to talk to you again about getting the gate shut there. I talked to the property manager that used to be in charge of that. They sold the, I sent him pictures, they sold it to somebody else. And he's trying to work with the other new owner that actually owns, I guess it's the apartment right there that is in charge of the fence right directly behind St. Luke's. And the gate is just ripped off. It's been that way for over a year or more. And it allows people to go down there and maybe do things that are unsafe or shouldn't be doing. And it's always been a, who runs that? You know, is it the water company who's responsible for it? I guess we kind of almost like have to look at that now. I'm looking at thinking it should be locked up, probably with the town having the keys, or we could get it from the property management. It probably needs to be secured. Yeah, and I guess that's really all I have to say. The homeless are doing real well. They're dry. We got somebody into rehab, alcohol rehab, which is a big deal. And they're doing really good. Not a lot of conflict and stuff like there was before. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to Captain Seuss, who will be followed by Burr Nissen.
Okay, 3 minutes. I'm just a little disappointed on not pulling number 5. You need 3 bids. You should have 3 bids at $147,000 to get a fair estimate on whatever it is that your things. Because I talked to the neighbors on that, and they just said that it's undersized, the things, but the whole area is undersized. I'd like to talk about the picture on the paper. I was there. I was protesting. I heard the thing. I don't think she should be speaking for the whole town. I'm not against what she said, but it was wrong. I believe there should be lawsuits. That's the only way we're to clean up this town. Another thing was there was a letter from the police department charging, a new law coming out. A lot of people are talking. It sounds, on on Nextdoor and stuff like that. They're saying, hey, this is just another scam that somebody's pulling on us, and it's you guys. And that should be re-looked at and clarified. So it's not me that's to talk. Other people should be able to come up here and say, no, what happens if somebody calls because, alarm goes on a car or something like that, and it costs $90 or $125 or $195. I mean, all this stuff. It gets frustrating when and I'm trying to be calm, and I can't bring flowers. Nobody can accept flowers. I did hear the other day when you have these quick meetings, and that's another thing. You have these quick meetings. You're not doing the 10-day rule. That's really important because eventually, the traffic issue on North 40, that's to come out, that's to go sideways on you. That's a $250 million project that's to go sideways, and you're underinsured by $30 million. Everybody knows that. Another thing, the garden, I heard the garden area, I was against that the whole time. You had DDT, that was the poison, and there's some people that were you sort of talked about it, but you're dumping more and more money onto it, and that's one of the things that got me into this way back before I got you. I sued in federal court in Portland because of issues. That was a prophetic dream. If you had that, you'd understand where I'm coming from. But I'm not the best public speaker. I'm sorry about that. And the 3 minutes is nothing. I can't talk in 3 minutes. Thank you. Sorry. And this,
Thank you. We will now move to Burr Nissen, who will be followed by Karen Yamamoto.
Good evening. My name is Burr Nissen. My wife and I have lived in Los Gatos for over 62 years. I'm 92 and a veteran. First, I want to thank you for serving as elected officials. It is people like yourselves that keep municipalities functioning. Now I want to quote a sentence from a recent article by David Brooks that appeared in the Mercury News. Quote, "We are in the middle of 4 unravelings in this country. One of them is domestic tranquility when immigration and custom enforcement agents bring down their jackboots." Unquote. ICE. There are approximately 600 municipalities across the country that limit the staging and operating of ICE in town and city property. My feeling is that the town is condoning ICE actions if it does not make a statement. Now, if the council is uncomfortable with that, we need to know why. There are probably some citizens, it's a tricky situation, there are probably some citizens in this town of Los Gatos who may not have the same opinion as I do, and you represent them also. In the article by David Brooks, he also mentions Tacitus, a Roman historian who wrote that tyrants bring about the disappearance of good as morally healthy people lie low in order to survive. I say that is how democracies die, and that is also how patriotism is born. Please consider these realities that all of us are facing, that America is facing, and become one of those 600 municipalities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Yamamoto.
I'm getting my exercise today. I wish I had gotten to speak before you had agreed to everything. On number 8, it's the Pacific Water Art. It has entailed 2 fountains that are in Los Gatos. They have been maintained by this company, well, built and maintained since 2000. We have spent over $50,000 in 2024, We spent $77,000 on a UV dysfunction system. And now it looks like we're spending more money on a fountain. I'm sorry. Last time I checked, we're looking at a deficit. And we're going to spend possibly another $100,000 on a fountain? I'm sorry, that's just a waste of money right now. I would hope that the town council would be a little frugal under the circumstances of what we are facing in our deficit in the future. You cannot just allocate funds on wasted projects. You're going to have to tighten the belts. You may not be elected officials, but you certainly will live here. It is important that we do not waste money on things that do not need to be fixed right now. Our infrastructure? Sure, that's understandable. We need to fix some of the sewers. We need to fix some of the things. When these tall buildings come in, they're going to make a mess of our streets. But we need to be a little bit more frugal with the money because it is going to cost us a whole lot more in the future.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards in the room, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. I'll give it 1 second. And I will close verbal communications. Thank you all for your comments. We will now move to our public hearing this evening, which is item 11, to consider a recommendation by the Planning Commission to approve a request to modify a plan development to allow for 2 lot line adjustments between 3 properties and a zone change.
Great, thank you, Mayor, and good evening. Before you tonight is consideration of 2 lot line adjustments, an amendment to the Greenridge Terrace Plan Development Ordinance, and a zone change. The 3 subject properties are located south of Blossom Hill Road. 2 are within the La Terrace subdivision created through the PD ordinance, and 1 just outside the subdivision. All 3 properties are currently undeveloped. The applicant proposes 2 lot line adjustments between the 3 properties. Because the property configurations are within the PD area would change, a modification of the applicable PD ordinance is required. Additionally, a portion of 1 property within the PD would be transferred to the property outside of the PD, necessitating a zone change from HR 2.5 plan development to HR 1. All proposed lots would meet the zoning requirements for HR properties, and all other aspects of the PD would remain unchanged. On January 14th, the Planning Commission considered the request and forwarded a recommendation of approval to the Council by unanimous vote. Staff recommends that the Council accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and take the steps outlined in your staff report to approve the lot line adjustments and introduce an ordinance repealing and replacing PD Ordinance 2281 and a second ordinance affecting the zone change. This concludes my presentation, and staff's available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
Hi, thank you for the report. I may have missed it, but are all 3 subject properties owned by the same party?
They are not. They're owned by different parties.
And so the application is, it's the town that's making the application, is that correct?
No, the application has been provided by the applicants and borne at the cost of the applicants.
And are all of the property owners the applicants?
Yes, there's multiple applicants because they're so intertwined. There's multiple applicants for this project.
And are any of the subject properties not represented by the applicants?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I will open up communication on this item. We have 1 comment from Mark Ellenborgen. I apologize if I...
Hi, good evening. I'm Mark Ellenbogen. I'm representing La Terra and Greenridge Terrace. We've got Hannah Brunetti Amanda Musi-Verdell here as well, and I'm going to let her explain exactly what we've done with the lot lines and why, if we could.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Musi-Verdell with Hannah Brunetti. We're proposing a lot line normally not going in front of you, but because of the circumstances, as Sean explained, you get to decide. Currently, oh, Sean, do you have that exhibit? Oh, I don't see it, so, okay, thanks. I just added some color to the lot line adjustment, so it's kind of a little bit more easily explained. So between lot 1 and lot 2, the red line is the current property line, which you could see it kind of goes over a valley and through the proposed trail in 2 spots. And so what we were proposing to do between lot 1 and lot 2 is make that line a diagonal to more closely align with the trail, and for future potential homes to have their yard behind the house and not right up against the property line to give a little bit more privacy, and aligned with the trail so the trail's not going back and forth through your property. And then between lot 1 and lot 3, which is that periwinkle color, is what we're transferring from lot 1 to lot 3 in order to make that lot more compliant when they're building it out, to give it a little bit more space, and it was an area that we weren't using anyway. All easements will remain, the trail easement will remain, the scenic easements will remain, but we're just asking that the lot lines get adjusted to develop the properties in a more desirable fashion. And I'm available for any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you. Do you represent all of the property owners of the 3 subject properties?
Yes, and they're sitting here.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I had a quick question. Do you plan to, if this were to move forward pretty quickly, bring forward applications, or what is your timeline looking like?
Well, we would have to perfect the lot line adjustment, so that will take about 2 to 3 more months, and then it's whatever the market allows. I know Rich, one of the property owners, is ready to get going, but it may be a couple more years.
Okay. And then do you represent more of the properties that are undeveloped on Shady Lane than these 3?
Not at this moment. I mean, we are doing other work on Shady Lane, but this is Greenridge Terrace.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Or in the Shady Lane area. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, okay.
Yes, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. It was helpful to see the lot line with the contour lines, because as I'm looking at it, it looks like the lots were just sort of chunk, chunk, chunk without regard to the topography.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the numbers are in here, but is any property materially changing size?
Only lot 1 is, the smallest lot is increasing by about 1/3 of an acre, but the other 2 lots are even swap between the 2.
Okay, yeah, I saw it was a pretty minimal amount added to is it lot 3 maybe?
Yeah,
It's not lot 1?
yeah.
Is there a reason that that's being moved over? Does that lot need a minimum square footage or?
It already meets it. It just, so if they were to develop it now, they would be asking for exceptions. And so by us giving it to them, they don't have to come back in front of you when they build their house, because they won't be asking for exceptions, really.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. I have no other cards and no hands raised on Zoom. So you, as the applicant, you have 3 more minutes if you choose. Great, thank you. Okay, then I will close the public hearing and we will move to council member discussion and motions. Yes, Councilmember Badami.
I'll try a motion. This was vetted and passed unanimously by the Planning Commission. I'm in agreement with their deliberations. All property owners are in agreement, so I do not see a reason to deny the recommendation. My question for staff is, in making this motion, do I need to read into the record 8 paragraphs?
If you like, the motion could be to adopt the staff recommendation, including all 8 items in that recommendation.
Okay, so I move to adopt staff's recommendation, which includes the 8 items referenced by staff.
Yes, Councilmember Hudis?
Second.
Great. And just for the public's awareness, we are changing our order of operations on making motions and discussion. So we are, to move things along a little bit more efficiently, we are taking motions first, and then we'll have council discussion. Okay. Other thoughts on this item? Yes, Vice Mayor Risto.
I think Councilmember Badami phrased it perfectly, and I did watch the Planning Commission meeting as well. This is really not controversial. It makes a lot of good sense, and I think when there's an opportunity to have lot lines align with the contour and also make a very small lot a little bit bigger so that there's not exceptions required, it makes sense. So I'm supportive of this motion.
Great, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hudis?
I had a question for staff. Has there been any public comment on this received either at the Planning Commission or written comment?
Thank you for that question. We've not received any public comment, written or at public hearings.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we should do disclosures because this is a public hearing. Does anyone have any disclosures they'd like to share with the council? Yes, Councilmember Hudis?
I visited the site.
Great. Vice Mayor Risto?
I visited the area. I can't say that I specifically knew the exact site, but I've been in the area.
Yes, agreed. I have the same disclosure. Okay, great. Seeing no other comments on this item, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we will now move to other business. We have 3 items this evening. The first is item 12, which is to adopt amendments to Council Policy 5-02 flag policy to establish a commemorative flag framework. I will turn to our town manager, Chris Constantine, with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 items on the agenda that relate to our flag policy. The first one will be the general change to our flag policy that would add a section authorizing commemorative flags. It is agnostic to any commemorative flag. It just offers the option for council to pass a resolution to have a commemorative flag placed on our flagpole. The next item, item 13, will speak specifically to an individual flag that was requested to be brought forth as a resolution. And so you're seeing them bifurcated so that you could approve the policy first and then consider the resolution associated with the commemorative flag. A number of years ago, the council passed policy 5-02. As you look at that policy, it's very generic, related to the town seal, the town flag, and procedures for raising and lowering the flag on town property. It did not have any provision for a commemorative flag. At the council meeting of December 16th, the council considered whether to modify this flag policy and to address commemorative flags. And at that meeting, the council directed our staff to return with proposed amendments that would allow for the commemorative flag framework and also to come forth with a resolution considering the Progress Pride flag. Staff reviewed various policies from other jurisdictions. The majority of cities do allow commemorative flags and do so under the provision that flags are governmental speech that require formal council authorization. And in doing so, we took some of the practices that include that resolution requirement initiated by council, limiting the duration and the number of locations where a commemorative flag may be displayed, and to expressly state that those flagpoles that we maintain are not public forums, but solely available to the government to decide what speech to propose. Our amendment in Policy 5.02 is consistent with these approaches, and they're designed to clarify our authority and your discretion. So specifically to the proposed amendments that follow those best practices, as you would read the latter half of the policy, what we did were some non-substantive grammatical and formatting changes to the other provisions of the policy, but the only substantive changes are the new section that's titled under commemorative flags. A commemorative flag would be one that's initiated, the action is initiated by a council member, and that action initiation would be through a resolution to the town council during a public meeting. That resolution must expressly determine that the display constitutes governmental speech and relates to a legitimate governmental interest consistent with our town's strategic priorities. The display may only occur at a single designated flagpole within the town hall complex. That the duration of any display is limited in its duration to not exceed 31 consecutive days, which is more or less 1 month, unless it's February, in which case it could be potentially more. And that each commemorative display requires a separate action from the council. I can go into further details, but I think that's sufficient enough for the council to consider and have discussion on the generic revision to the policy.
Thank you. Questions for the town manager? Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
Under the proposed policy, would a particular flag have to be renewed as a separate council agenda item?
Yes, every instance, for whatever duration that initial instance would be requested, would have to come back to council as another resolution.
And so the instance, is it 30 days or 31 days? Is it one time of 31 days, or is it the same 31 days every year?
That any resolution you would pass would be limited to no longer than 31 days.
Okay, and it would be for 1 year only, a particular year?
It would be presumed that you would be displaying a flag for either a month or a week or 2 weeks, not to be coming back multiple times during the course of the year to display a flag that adds up to 31 days.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I appreciate some of the information about what other municipalities have done. I know that some have resolutions where it states, for example, a specific flag flies for a specific month every year. There's others where it flies only for that year, and then it ends up on consent each year when that month comes up again. So would our resolution allow us to, would we be repeating a resolution every year if we had the same specific flag that we wanted in a specific month? For example, the pride flag, if we decided we wanted it in June, would that come before the council every single year to determine if it could be flown in June of that year?
It would need to come to council every year.
Okay. I know, for example, I believe in Los Altos Hills, it just goes on consent every year.
That is a choice that the council can make to change the policy if they desire to do something in perpetuity on a resolution, which in effect would require future councils to continue that practice and to take an affirmative action to stop that practice, as opposed to reaffirming every year that they continue to desire that speech going forward.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Along the same lines, can you talk through what the actual process would be? So if a council member wants to bring forward the pride flag, let's say for 2027, what would that appear under council matters? What would be the process for that?
So the council would have to agendize any agenda item in accordance with your agenda setting policy, which could be done by an action of the mayor for that item to be heard under council matters, or two individual council members can make that request to agendize that matter at a future meeting, or three council members can make an agendized request that's the affirmative action that they desire to take.
Okay, thank you. And so we can get into this a little bit more, but it looks like there's a variety, different cities do this in a variety of different ways, right?
Correct.
Some choose to do it in perpetuity, some bring back resolutions every year.
It does vary. You also have one city, as you will hear on the next agenda item, that uses lights for the specific flag that's before them. We did not research necessarily, though, every instance of other flags that are taken as a separate action by those governmental agencies. We generally looked and searched for their general flag policy with specific reference to the pride flag, and the responses that we receive are summarized in the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the policy before us? Okay. I'll move to verbal communications. I only have one comment card right now on this item, which is from Captain Seuss.
Captain Seuss, Department of Peace. I'm coming from the Holy Ghost, representing the Holy Ghost, because I'm a prophetic dreamer, and I know that there's to be a lot of flags. And I want my first flag, the pirate flag, to be the first one to be flown. So I'm going to ask, eventually I'm going to ask Mary, because she's the only one that voted against the four of you. And I'll pass out some straws, because you guys are like in the Wizard of Oz, you four are that way. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards in the room for item 12, and I have no hands raised on Zoom for item 12. Seeing no other comments, I will close public comment on this item and go to my fellow council members for discussion or a motion. Yes, Vice Mayor Stowe.
Well, now that we're following Rosenberg's Rules of Order, I'll make a motion and then we can discuss. So I move to adopt the amendments to the council policy. Oh my God, sorry, I can't tell the difference between an S and a 5. 5-02 flag policy to establish a formal framework permitting the display of commemorative flags as an exercise of government speech when initiated by a council member and approved by resolution of the town council.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll make a comment. I mean, I think this is a great idea. We have not had any option to have any commemorative flag in the past. And I was living here when the Brazilians were here. I can imagine, I lived right around the corner, and Santa Cruz Avenue had a giant Brazilian flag that covered the entire street. We would never get that on a flagpole, but I imagine we would have wanted to do that. We have a sister city of Listowel, I'll get the name wrong, Ireland, and when there used to be the literature festival and other events, I can see that with the sister city, we would have times when we want to fly the flag. And we certainly have heard from our community that we would like to have the opportunity to raise the pride flag. And given that we do not have the ability to raise any commemorative flag, I think it's time to, amend our policy and make this possible by a majority of the council as each resolution comes up.
Thank you. I'll second the motion and go to council members for discussion. Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
I mean, I think separating this into two policies makes sense. It gives us the framework, and we can see how that works, and then it allows us to look specifically at the Progress Pride flag, which I am in favor of having a way to fly that flag. I want to make sure that the framework that we have survives the test of time, not just allows for one particular flag. And so I want to put something out there for discussion. I'm not advocating for this position. Depending on where things go, maybe I may make an amendment. But one of the challenges with flying something other than an official state or municipal flag is determining whether that represents the sentiment of the community and the will of the community. And sometimes it's tough to tell. And it's difficult to make a determination. So I'll just throw an example out there. For instance, if a council member wanted to raise a flag that supported a political candidate or a ballot measure upon which the residents would eventually vote in the future, or if a future council majority did not reflect the cultural identity of the population. Our council is only 5 people, and sometimes we've even had vacancies. So one way to enhance the possibility that only a generally accepted message flag would be raised would be to require a supermajority rather than a simple majority. It wouldn't guarantee anything, but it might raise the possibility that with a higher hurdle, it would be a more generally accepted message. So I'm not making an amendment, I'm just throwing the thought out there for discussion.
Thank you. We'll go to Vice Mayor Risto.
First of all, I don't think government property can be used for political agendas or anything, and I want to check with the town attorney. I mean, I know that staff cannot take positions on, and given that this flag is government speech, I don't think it can be political, but can you clarify that?
That's correct. The FPPC regulations prohibit the use of town resources for political activities, and that includes ballot measures.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll just say, personally, I understand what you're saying, Councilmember Hudes, about trying to reflect the community. I would be opposed to a supermajority only because that is required in very specific situations, like for financial measures to go on a ballot or something. That's a really special high barrier. And I think that we make incredibly consequential decisions for our community without requiring a supermajority. And I don't even put this on the level with that, although I understand why you would be thinking that. But that would not be something that I think would be a good idea. I think a simple majority, and probably in most cases we'd have a supermajority.
Yeah, Councilmember Rennie.
We're calling it government speech. Not going to be too articulate, but I think my thoughts are that we need to try to keep the government to the basic services that we're providing. And I worry a lot when we start getting into areas where we have to pick winners and losers, where, I think Councilmember Hudes started to say, do we represent all the cultural identities of the town? When we start getting into choosing flags that represent one identity, but there's opposing identities, I think that's an area that the town should not be going into, and that's my concern. I think Councilmember Risto mentioned the idea of flying the Listowel flag if, our sister city is in town. I see some benefit to that because I'm having a hard time seeing how it can be controversial. But I think we need to be careful about flying flags that are controversial, that have different perspective in town, and that the government, your government here in Los Gatos, is choosing one perspective over another. And I just think allowing any commemorative flag, you're starting to wade into a difficult area where I think we as a council need to be fair to everybody. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Badami.
I echo the sentiments of Councilmember Rennie. He used the term winners and losers, but technically we would be choosing flags that may give preferential choice over another group, which actually could be an equity issue and has the potential to cause divisiveness within the community.
Thank you. So I'll jump in and just say, I think overall this is a thoughtfully drafted policy. I hear what Councilmember Hudes is saying. I think there's legitimate questions there. To me, my understanding of government speech sort of limits that. I also don't, again, while I appreciate the sentiment, I don't think that a supermajority is appropriate here. I think it's important to reiterate, we talked about this a bit last time, but this doesn't open up our flagpoles to unlimited expression. It's about exercising the council's discretion and government speech, and expressing values that we claim to uphold, like, belonging, equal protection, things to that effect. And importantly, cities across the county, many of them have adopted clear, legally sound policies that allow them to fly flags. The other thing I'll say is that I don't foresee a situation where a slew of council members or a council member is bringing a slew of flags forward. I just don't. I haven't heard that desire. Speaking for myself, I have one flag that I'm interested in displaying, and it is the next item on the agenda. And so, while I recognize that there are concerns about the way this could be operationalized, I think this is a good start. If we end up having issues, I'd be willing to reopen this, next year and have that discussion. My only thought on this item is I would, with something like, I'd like to see the potential to memorialize a flag being flown, so you don't have to bring it back every year. But if next year's mayor could choose to put that resolution on consent and just sort of do it that way. So I think this is a good start, and I think we should adopt this policy so we can hear the next item and then in the future potentially revisit this. But I think this is a good start. I think it's very simple and basic and lays a framework that I think is can be universally understood and supported. Okay. Oh, yeah, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. And I don't think this is that unusual. A lot of other municipalities have commemorative flags. So, I think, to be clear, it will fly below the other flags. This isn't having equal weight with the United States or California or Los Gatos. It flies beneath one of them. It is something that will be temporary each year or maybe only once. We never know. And it's just, this policy is just to make it possible. And anytime we have a discussion where a council member wants to bring a flag over or bring it up for consideration, it will have a full public hearing and people can weigh in and we will hear from our public. And so I think the council will be able to make an informed decision with each opportunity for a commemorative flag. But without passing this resolution, we don't have that opportunity, and we would be in a very tiny minority of municipalities that don't even bother to do this. So I see a lot of reasons why this makes a lot of sense. I also want to thank staff for bifurcating this and giving us the opportunity to have a general policy, and then we can move towards specifics as it goes along. So thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. We have a motion on the floor, which is to adopt amendments to Council Policy 5-2 flag policy to establish a commemorative flag policy framework. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
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 I would make the comment that I do support neutrality with support to residents having individual freedom to fly flags on their own property, but I cannot support the motion.
Okay, and any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, passes 3-1 to 1. We will now move on to item 13, which is a resolution for the Progress Pride flag, for the Pride flag to be displayed under our new flag policy during the month of June 2026. I will look to staff for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we spoke to some of the issues, and I will not repeat it from the last policy discussion. I will go right to some of the survey results we received from Santa Clara County at the request of the council. We received policies from 10 Santa Clara County jurisdictions. Of those jurisdictions, 5 jurisdictions have formalized the Pride flag displays through a council resolution or an annual commemorative flag calendar. This includes Milpitas, Morgan Hill, Mountain View, San Jose, and Sunnyvale. 3 jurisdictions allow commemorative or ceremonial flags by council resolution under a governmental speech framework, but do not establish automatic or standing pride flag displays in their base policies. Those cities include Gilroy, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hills. In those cities, any pride flag display would require a separate council approval. 1 jurisdiction, Santa Clara, limits flag displays to governmental and narrowly defined ceremonial flags that are approved by resolution and does not establish an automatic pride flag display in the base policy, albeit they can still approve that separately if they desire to. And then 1 jurisdiction, Campbell, does not provide for a commemorative flag display on their flagpoles, but recognizes Pride Month through its water tower lighting policy rather than raising the pride flag. And so there's a number of jurisdictions. The majority of them tend to have general policies that allow for commemorative flags and then varying ways in which the pride flag and which pride flag would be flown. The policies reviewed are consistently reaffirm the policy that we put into place in the last agenda item, that the flagpoles that are the government's are not a public forum, and that any display of a commemorative flag constitutes a public interest in governmental speech. In a separate item in February 17th, this agenda will we've already amended the flag policy, and so the action that's before you today is to approve the attached resolution, which would authorize the flying of the Progress Pride flag for the month of June 2026. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions of staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will turn to public comment. We have a number of public commenters this evening. We will start with Elijah. I'm sorry, Elijah, for butchering your last name, Ashigian. And then we will move to Terry Hernandez.
Sorry, I'm going to have to find this. Hi, I'm Eli. I'm an LGHS junior, and I'm speaking today in support of the proposal to raise the rainbow flag in Pride Month. At the council meeting in December, where folks discussed a similar proposal, I noticed a lot of very extreme statements made by several commenters. I think that there's a fear among many that council actions will somehow encourage or put pressure on adolescents to change their sexuality or gender, or that raising the pride flag would somehow endorse a certain political or religious ideology. I'd like to remind council that this is just a flag. Its effect is not to encourage any particular ideology. No one is going to become gay because of a flag. Rather, its effect is to remind the LGBTQ community that the town strives to be a safe space despite historical actions to the contrary. This isn't just a nice thing to do, it's actually another way to address the mental health crisis facing our town. The primary cause of this epidemic is a feeling of isolation, and there's nothing more isolating than bullying, which often targets LGBTQ communities. Some of the results are that LGBTQ teens are 6 times more likely to experience depression than non-LGBTQ teens, and that 48% of transgender adults considered suicide in the last year. These aren't just numbers, they're people in our community, and many of them may feel that their town has deserted them. Regardless of political ideology, religious affiliation, or anything really, I think we can all agree that no one in our town should be made to feel that their only option left is to take their own lives. The decision to raise a pride flag is just a small acknowledgement of that crisis and a rededication of ourselves to creating a harmonious community. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move to Terry Hernandez, who will be followed by Jan Schwartz.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Terry Hernandez, and I am a resident of Santa Clara County. I'm also the president of Pride Social South County. We are a nonprofit that provides support to our LGBT community in the county. One of the things that I wanted to share is that this is not a political statement to raise a pride flag. It's actually showing inclusivity of your residents. And whether it's here, whether it's in another city, by raising the pride flag in the month of June, you're showing that they're also part of the community. We also have youth that have higher rates As or the speaker before me shared, there are higher rates of suicide, and especially in the time that we're living right now, we have our LGBT community are being killed, and we also want to hear from wherever we live, our community, that we are also cared about. So this is one small way of doing that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We now have Jan Schwartz, who will be followed by Gus Hu.
Thank you. I'm Jan Schwartz, and I've lived in Los Gatos since 1974. And I have a beautiful little granddaughter, used to be a granddaughter. They are now an ex. They have changed their passport. They've changed their driver's license. They are in college. And this is an acceptance by the government that they are non-binary. It's a little hard for me to accept, but that is where they are in their happy place. So we talked before about not having a flag, not providing perspectives. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is an acceptance of what is. I do believe that these people are happier this way, that they feel this way, and we need to accept what science has accepted. On the other hand, I'm also on the board of New Museum Los Gatos. I'm not speaking for the museum, but it is part of my value, is to bring to this community culture, acceptance. DEI is an ugly word. We're not allowed to say that anymore, but I do believe that it is a core value of ours to have inclusivity, not exclusivity, and to bring people into our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Gus Hu, followed by Sue Ann Lorig.
Hi, guys. I sent you in, and I wanted to, in a backdrop of the Friday the 13th, the monument that Trump tried to take down the gay flag monument. I don't know but I wanted that to be up there, because what Trump's doing is totally wrong. My take on this. I already know that World Cup's coming. There's going to be all kinds of flags here. It's one of those things. But I did send you in. There was major concerns. Both sides have people dying on it, and what you're doing, there's no. This wasn't public. This was never public. You got 3 days. It's not in the newspaper. There's not. I mean, there's. Let's see. There's 43 people that spoke on it last time, and. The one person that drives around that sued the mayor and the vice mayor on this issue, she's not even listed, for comments. I mean, I would go in because you dismissed her in the minutes. You're not to do this fair. You have one person that speaks on it, and Rob Moore, who's pushing this, and you're using high school kids, and they're threatening people. I sent you into this, and we're to remember you if you vote against it. I mean, you don't use kids that way. You can do it logically. You give two debates and then send it out and let the town have a straw vote on it. These people don't represent the town, have residents here. Some of them aren't even residents. The people that spoke on it before, half of them were out-of-towners. They called in. They're from San Jose and stuff like that. I mean, if you're living here and let the town people have a decision on it, put it in the newspaper, have a special meeting on it, and then have one person represent the neutral side, because it is a neutral thing. You don't have to follow the rest of the thing. This is a town. It's not a city. That's where people have been saying that. This is a town. treated as a town. We all know each other. We all can talk. We don't want to argue over it. And I grew up I was born in San Francisco. I went to things. I'm neutral on it, but there's truth that if you had an argument, a normal argument on it, a debate on it. I'm not the person that does it. I can give things, and it doesn't represent peace. This flag doesn't represent peace. It's driving the community apart. That's not the symbol of the original, the religious views on it. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Sue-Ann Lorig, who will be followed by Siona Singhal.
Hello, Mayor Moore, Vice Mayor Risto, and Council. I'm Sue-Ann Lorig and a resident of Los Gatos. I'm here to speak in favor of item 13, raising the Progress Pride flag at Town Hall during June 2026. And I actually would support it happening every June if that could happen, that you could change it. Thank you for placing this important subject on the agenda tonight. As we know, LGBTQ plus people are still targeted, ostracized, and physically and emotionally harmed for their gender, identity, or sexuality. Additionally, we know that LGBTQ plus teens without support have higher suicide rates than their cis peers. Flying a Progress Pride flag is just such a simple thing to do, yet it may save a life when someone sees that they're supported. A pride flag is much more than a symbol of LGBTQ plus pride. By flying it, it shows that we support people and that we're here for them. Currently, as we heard, a large number of the municipalities in Santa Clara County visibly demonstrate they are welcoming communities by flying the pride flag in June. As we heard in December, San Jose and other communities have done so for years with no problem whatsoever. By joining them, we showed that we too stand for justice and compassion in our human relations, and that all are welcome here in Los Gatos. I urge you to join the cities in Santa Clara County and across the Bay Area in flying the Progress Pride flag this June. You may save a life. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Siona, who will be followed by Lee Cummings.
Good evening, council members. My name is Siona Singhal. I'm a junior at Los Gatos High School speaking in support of item 13, raising the pride flag in June. When I hear people say homophobia is not an issue in Los Gatos, I'm taken aback. How can anyone truly believe that when the LGBTQ community has and continues to face prejudice, ridicule, and hate? When I moved to Los Gatos in 7th grade, it was hard for me to find people whom I truly considered my friends. I had conversations with people at lunch and chatted with them during class, but I never felt truly comfortable and truly myself. Until one day after school, one of my friends dragged me to the campus wellness center for a Club 41 meeting. Club 41 was a place where LGBTQ students could come together and de-stress after a long day. The club offered many different activities, board games, drawings, and even playing the piano. But my favorite, by far, was creating posters. Seeing the messy, colorful signs we hung throughout school made me feel proud. It was a visible reminder that I was part of something and making an impact. We always signed our posters, believing that if people cared enough to look closely, they would see the names behind the time and effort we had poured into them. But that belief didn't last long. One morning, I walked into school and saw one of our posters torn in half, hanging tattered against the wall. My friends and I had drawn a pride flag and written, "We have pride." It had taken us 2 afternoons to make, yet someone hated it enough to rip it apart. I felt embarrassed, ashamed, and scared that someone would know I had been part of creating that poster. What had once felt like a small, joyful act of expression now felt dangerous, as if being seen or even associated with the sign could make me a target. Out of fear, we never signed another poster. Unfortunately, that fear is a reality for far too many adolescents in Los Gatos. When I walk through downtown, I see posters in storefront windows declaring that LG stands united against hate. Yet those words feel hollow when students still feel unsafe expressing who they are. If our town is willing to display those messages publicly, it must also take responsibility for living up to them. As the banners hanging around Main Street Bridge proclaim, "You belong in Los Gatos." And with that claim comes the obligation to ensure that every member of our town feels seen, protected, and supported, not just in words, but in action. You owe it to the underrepresented LGBTQ youth in Los Gatos, those who feel afraid to embrace their true selves, who have faced hatred from classmates, and who walk into school every day knowing they are met with judgment instead of acceptance. They deserve more than slogans and surface-level support. They deserve a community that protects them, listens to them, and proves through action that they belong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask this speaker a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm trying to decide who to ask. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'll give you a little backstory. So obviously from the white hair I come from a different generation, and my generation had to deal with the understanding themselves if they're gay with different resources than we have today. My brother is gay. My stepdaughter is gay. She's 45, so that's still yet another generation. What I'm trying to understand, and I'm asking the younger people that are speaking, not some of the older ones, that why is it important that the town flies the flag? How much extra help does that give? And what I'm mentioned kind of before that I'm worried about, and I'm asking you because you gave the story about your poster being torn in half. One of my concerns is when the town starts flying the flag, it brings out more hate against the community. And I'm trying to balance between, do we want to draw more people out that, on the wrong side of hate here, and versus how much benefit is this really bringing? So my question for you is, if you can, and I understand if it's too much, how is this really important to young people?
Well, it's a loaded question, but I'll try my best. Like I said, being LGBTQ is often not normalized, especially with younger kids like middle school. It's hard when you aren't seeing examples of it around town. It's hard to accept that. So obviously raising the flag, just seeing it as you're walking to Main Street Burgers or walking to Pizza My Heart, it opens the avenue for acceptance, for getting exposure to that community, and instead of immediately shutting them down, instead supporting them. And I think despite what hate it may bring out, that's no reason to not show your support for this community, because they deserve it.
And so I think what I heard is that the flagpole that we're considering happens to be advantageous because it will be seen frequently by the high schoolers.
Yeah, though it may not seem like it will make that big of a difference, I truly think it will, because just getting that exposure and seeing that day to day, week to week is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to Lee Cummings, who will be followed by Scarlett Daynard.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lee, and I'm a junior at Los Gatos High School, and I'm speaking in support of item 13. When I was in elementary school, Dave's Avenue, go Cool Cats, my aunt was evicted from her apartment in Sacramento for hanging a pride flag out her window. And for a long time, I couldn't understand why, because I grew up in a community, this community, that chose kindness. I had never been afraid to love like my aunt had. My teachers and my neighbors and my camp counselors made sure of that. But now with the path our country is taking, I don't feel that kindness anymore. We are going backwards into hate and fear, and I can see it in the whispers in my school hallways and in the looks my friends and my neighbors and I receive from people who used to be kind. So today I'm asking this community to show us that they care and to place value on the diversity that makes this town beautiful. But most of all, I'm asking them, and I'm asking you, to choose kindness, because the only thing stronger than love, or is the only thing stronger than hate, is love. Thank you.
Thank you. Scarlett Daynard.
Hi, I'm Scarlett Daynard. I'm a freshman at Los Gatos High School, and I support item 13. I'd like to give a personal story to represent our youth demographic. My question for you is, do you have any reason to stand with hate? When I was 11 years old, my biggest fear was being different. It was around this time I first had started to think I was part of the LGBTQ community. I was horrified of being laughed at when I went to school just because of who I knew I loved. It was also around this time my family took a trip to San Francisco near Halloween. We took a bus tour through the city, and I couldn't even count on all of my fingers how many pride flags we saw waving around those streets. I vividly remember feeling a spark of hope and warmth each time I saw one. I knew I wasn't wrong or different to love somebody. I knew other people had these feelings too, and most importantly, I knew people had pride in it. This is why it is so important, even just for the month of June, to have pride flags here in Los Gatos. My community has experienced so much hate in this town, which I can confidently say is not what anybody here wants for our youth. I've been called names I cannot come up here and say because of how disrespectful they are. To those who believe being queer is a choice, please understand that at 11 years old, I would never have chosen to face the bullying I did. I didn't choose who I want to love, but I'm willing to fight to feel lucky. Lucky to be a part of this community and to feel proud rather than shameful. This is why I'm asking you to stand against hate and fight for our youth and our future. By putting up this flag, Los Gatos is not underrepresenting other communities that are widely normalized. Our town has long welcomed other demographics. However, many of our town's community does not show as much respect to LGBTQ folks. By putting this pride flag up, I believe it will simply represent equality rather than saying one demographic is greater than another. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Nova Jayaraj, and she is followed by Surya Pandian.
Good evening, Council. My name is Nova Jaraj, and I'm here tonight as a young person in our community speaking in support of item 13, raising the Progress Pride flag in Los Gatos. I want to begin by acknowledging a concern I've heard, that raising a flag may feel like overrepresenting one group or leaving others out. But to me, this isn't about exclusion at all. It's about responding to a very real history of harm in our town. When I was talking with a friend about this proposal, I told him that raising a flag seemed like such a small gesture. It's just a flag. But he told me that it wasn't small to him. He said seeing the flag would make him feel safer, even though he's still too scared to tell his family that he's actually gay. He's afraid to tell some of his closest friends because being queer can still feel isolating in Los Gatos. He shared that once he went to see a movie in town that featured queer characters, and he heard a man nearby mutter that the queer characters ruined the whole movie. It might seem like an offhand comment, but these moments stick. They send a message about who belongs and who doesn't. And these aren't isolated incidents. In 2021, homophobic slurs were graffitied at Los Gatos High School. When the rainbow sidewalk was installed, the mayor received threats and intense backlash. In 2016, a gay resident found his car covered in anti-gay slurs. I've personally seen pride flags put up by local businesses only to be torn days later. These are not abstract national debates. This is our town. So when we talk about raising the Progress Pride flag, we're not talking about politics. We're talking about whether LGBTQ plus residents, especially young people, feel safe and valued here. For a community that prides itself on kindness and inclusion, we have to ask ourselves whether we are living up to that promise. This flag will not solve everything, but it does send a clear message that Los Gatos recognizes the harm that has happened and that we are choosing to stand with those who have been targeted. Silence or neutrality on issues like this can feel like indifference to people who are hurting. As council members, you are not only representing the Los Gatos of today, but the Los Gatos that we're becoming. Many students will speak tonight. You've heard many speak tonight. We are telling you what kind of town we want to grow up in. One where people are free to be themselves without the fear of love, of all things. Like, to me, of all things that you could hate, hating love is just so unbelievable. We weren't asked by anyone to be here. We're here to act on our rights as constituents. So I urge you to consider that future very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Surya and then Guy Shayaham.
Good evening, esteemed chair. I'm Surya Pandian. I'm a sophomore and a local resident.
Can you put the mic a little bit closer to your mouth?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm Surya Pandian. I'm a sophomore here locally. I'm here to talk about item number 13, and I'm strongly in favor of this resolution. And I believe a common concern that was going around in negation to this resolution is that this will will create more hate in the community of Los Gatos. And I believe this concept mentioned by a councilman of opposing identities completely bewildered me, because we are all comprised of individual elements of ourselves, and to say that we are opposing each other through our identities is something that we don't want. It's not a rhetoric that we don't want to continue spreading throughout our community of Los Gatos. We are a small local town, and we want to combine ourselves. We want to show that we are all a community. And I believe the burden of the hate that this flag will create falls upon the councilman, and we shouldn't allow it to fall upon the individual selves. To say that we should only raise our flags in our own homes, and to say that the town won't raise the flag is completely, again, bewildered me, because I don't understand why we should allow the individual people to stop the hate themselves by holding the flag themselves, trying to represent a community that they might not even belong to. And again, this idea of opposing identities shouldn't exist, because as a community, we are all comprised of individual selves, and we should all love each other and respect each other to create a successful, more collaborative place for people. And our youth is our future. We can all agree on this. And because of this, I believe it's important for high schoolers and middle schoolers to know that they are accepted. The pride flag is not just a symbol of what we represent. It's a symbol of acceptance. And to say that we don't accept people, or by not raising the flag, we are saying that we don't want to take upon the burden that this hate or this community brings to our town. And the hate that this brings should fall upon the burden of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to Guy, who will be followed by Jeff Suzuki.
Hello, my name is Guy Shaham, and I'm here with the Los Gatos Saratoga Youth Advocacy to speak in support of item 13, raising the pride flag. One of the biggest points of contention I often see in topics like the one today is whether explicitly advocating for a specific group implies the exclusion of other groups, as mentioned previously by some counselors. I understand the general concern in the matter, but to be honest, in practice, this concept doesn't hold up to me. Tell me, does having a Black History Month mean that Asian history doesn't matter? Does having churches in our town mean that our Muslim neighbors shouldn't have mosques to pray in? How about women's suffrage? Does standing up for women's rights mean that men's rights don't matter? Of course not. I could go on and on about how including a specific group doesn't mean that members of other sexualities, religions, or ethnicities are not welcome, because let's be honest, no straight person is going to come to our town, see the pride flag, and think, guess I'm not welcome. So why shouldn't we care about putting up a flag that doesn't do anything but include a historically oppressed and marginalized group? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Jeff, who is followed by Karen Yamamoto.
Good evening, council members. First, I'll start with saying that I am not speaking in my capacity as a Complete Streets and Transportation Commissioner, but as a private resident and the president of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. I would like to start with a story. About 2 years ago, I volunteered for the Rainbow Defense Brigade, which helps ensure that events held for the LGBTQ plus community are safe and not full of harassment. It was held at the Queer, Trans, and Allied Student Summit at Watsonville High School. I wore an orange vest and I ate donuts and I felt like a cop for a bit. And there was no significant amount of harassment, thankfully. But I had an opportunity to look at the students who are coming in and seeing how they interacted with one another. Many of them were of varying gender identities. Many of them were straight. Many of them were gay or lesbian. There were some trans people there, some non-binary folks that I heard. And if there's one thing that I felt like characterized the atmosphere of this event. It was that it was filled with abundant joy. And it made me realize something, which is that spaces like these are quite scarce, and they often have to be carved out proactively. We can see that there is a real issue of invisibility, of repression, and that many people feel that they cannot publicly love the people they love or be who they want to be. And if hoisting this Progress Pride flag plays a small role, that is the least that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to Karen Yamamoto, who is followed by Chelsea Bay.
I just want to start off. I'm so proud of these young people. Oh my God, I'm just amazed by them. I actually rewrote what I was going to write. With the passing of number 12, there was one little part that Chris said that in the statement that had to do with federal law, federal regulated flags, and I wanted to clarify that and how that affects the pride flag. I'm for the pride flag, but I do see where issues are coming up with a couple of you. The issue of if the federal government is banning pride flags, like Gus who was trying to explain, it does create a concern for us if we vote to have the pride flag flown and it's against federal regulations. How then does that affect our community? So with that said, is it possible that we can do the flag for not just 31 days, but can we do it for just a weekend? Is that still part of the federal government issue? I kind of need a clarification on that because it came up later. The other thing that you guys discussed was the controversy over how it supports our community. And I'm going to answer Mr. Rennie's question. When we unite as a group, as a town, as citizens, the hate has quieted down. It did it before when we united, when I last wore the shirt and marched down that street, Main Street. And I believe by raising the pride flag again, we can quiet the hate. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Chelsea, who will be followed by Kylie Clark.
Good evening, Council. My name is Chessel Bay, and I'm a senior at Los Gatos High School, and I'm speaking in support of item 13. I'm up here because the reason why I love my school and this town so much is because it reflects one of my core values, which is community. Additionally, I'm proud to say that I am a member of the LGBTQ+ community, and even though it took me a while, like a few years to be openly comfortable to say that out loud, I am beyond grateful that I live in a community full of so much love and warmth, and I have friends that make me feel safe to express myself. I currently work as a nursing assistant in a nursing home with some of the most amazing elderly people, many of which are part of the LGBTQ+ community. I've heard many stories of elderly residents feeling fearful and of expressing their identity because it made them feel unsafe for a large portion of their lives, which led to them to only recently publicly express how who they truly are, which I find both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Imagine living your whole life not being able to tell your best friend who you have a crush on, or get your nails done, or go dress shopping because society put you in a box based on your biology. No one should have to hide who they love or who they are for the majority of their life, but that is the sad reality for nearly all LGBTQ plus seniors in our nation. Los Gatos is a community that is approximately 21% elderly, which is well exceeding the national percentage. These people have spent the majority of their lives hiding such an important part of who they are because they felt unsafe or they feared criticism. They hid these parts of themselves from even their closest family members, their friends, and they were just never able to openly express who they are, which is, like I said, heartbreaking. I say that we must raise the pride flag in LG for the seniors in our community that only recently felt comfortable or are still uncomfortable with publicly expressing their identity. Justice and making the community feel safe for everyone shouldn't be revolutionary, but it is. Raising the pride flag in the heart of Los Gatos will publicly show the values of our town for everyone to see, reinforcing the core values that make this town so great. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Kylie, and the last card I have up here is Jim Castleman.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kylie. I'm a resident of Los Gatos. Every June, pride flags are flown in 11 out of 15 cities in Santa Clara County, according to the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. And they tell those cities' residents that they are welcome and they are safe and they're desired to be there, even in this time of fear and hatred in our country. And at the same time, right now, Los Gatos' flagpole sits bare without the pride flag. None of these other cities have had some of the problems that we're hearing some of the council members might have as concerns. They found a way to fly specifically this flag and to participate in the countywide effort. And I think that the excuse that there will suddenly be demand for every flag under the sun just doesn't make sense, because you are only being asked to fly this flag. We are here to ask you to fly this flag. It's not singling out one community. It's responding to a need for a message of welcoming and inclusion. And that's why so many other cities are flying the pride flag. I do want to say, if you listen to nobody else, please listen to our youth. What message are you sending them? First, about civic engagement if they come here time and time again and then you vote against their will, but also worse, what message are you sending our LGBTQ youth who have higher rates of suicide and of self-harm about whether they're welcome in Los Gatos? Their kids in our country is telling them that they're not allowed to be who they are. And I want our town to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we can do that tonight. I want to address Councilmember Rennie's question. I think that was a really good one. And I just want to say, from what I've seen, and I think from some of what we've heard, the hate is there. It's already there. And the town can either respond to it or not. And I think when the town responds to the hate, it might get louder in some ways, but there's not silence in response to it. And I think that's really, really powerful. It's unique for the town to raise our flag rather than for a business or resident, because it says that you are safe in Los Gatos, not at this business, not at this home. It's in our entire town, and that is important and powerful. In my opinion, it isn't the council's job to be neutral. It's to guide the town in the right direction, to reflect what the folks who elected you believe in, and that's what you're hearing tonight. It's what you've heard from the vast majority of residents, that we believe in this and we support it. And I'm asking you to help guide the town in a direction towards inclusivity, compassion, and kindness. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go to Jim Castleman.
Good evening, Mayor Moore and City Council. I just want to also speak on behalf of supporting this Resolution 13 in support of flying the pride flag in June. I have also been extremely impressed by the number of youth that have come out and the way that they very eloquently have expressed how important this issue is to them. And being of a generation closer to most of you, I'm very proud of them, and I hope that the City Council will see how important this issue is to them and support them. I have an adult son who is gay, and having firsthand experience, it can be very difficult for gay youth to feel comfortable, to feel accepted. And I think that this is a symbol of acceptance of the LGBTQ community, and I think it's very meaningful and important. And I think all of the youth who came here tonight really did a great job of emphasizing that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last in-person speaker card. We have 2 hands raised on Zoom. We will first go to Ali Miano, who will be followed by Ken Yeager.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my comment. I just wanted to say, as I did the last time this issue came up, that for me, this is a no-brainer. And I believe it really ought to be for our council because you're supporting a community that is traditionally marginalized. You've heard all the statistics, the higher suicide rates, et cetera. You know, the mental health difficulties of LGBTQ youth. So why not support them? Why not support this community? And really, when you support a community that is being maligned and bullied, as we're seeing all across this country, not just with LGBTQ folks, but of course, immigrants and Black folks and other communities, and you see the kind of efforts at exclusion going on, I think it's incumbent upon us all to stand up and just say no. You know, we've got to have some courage. And whether or not, you know, the federal government wants to say you can or you can't, I think we all know what's right. And exercising our right for free speech or government speech or whatever you want to call it, and standing up for folks, that's what we need to be doing, especially now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Ken Yeager.
Sorry. Yes, I speak to you this evening as a former San Jose City Council member who, after I was elected in 2000, wondered if the rainbow flag had ever flown at City Hall. I learned it had not, nor had any of the other 14 cities in the county. And I knew it was time for the city of San Jose to make history by being the first. Many conversations took place with the mayor, council members, and the city manager. While some had questions, there was universal support. And so on June 26, 2001, along with Mayor Gonzalez, I raised the flag. It was one of my most proudest moments because I knew it sent a message to our residents and employees that we were a welcoming city for everyone, including those who identify as LGBTQ+. Now, every June since then, San Jose City Hall Plaza is crowded with people and elected officials to celebrate raising the flag. No controversy, no protests, no problem. 10 other cities have raised the rainbow flag at their city halls, and I've attended most of them because I recognize their historic significance. This June will mark 25 years since the rainbow flag was first flown in San Jose. 25 years, a quarter of a century. I urge you to be on the right side of history and join the other cities that recognize the significance, the value, and the importance to the entire community of raising the rainbow flag. Now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other hands raised on Zoom and no other in-person speakers, so we will close public comment, and I will look to the council for questions, comments, or a motion. Yes, Vice Mayor Stowe.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. Ms. Yamamoto brought up something about the federal government banning the pride flag, which I was unaware of. I know there's some states where at the state level they've banned it and cities have adopted the pride flag as their city flag or other things, but I haven't heard anything about the federal government having any jurisdiction over this.
Since the federal government passes thousands of laws, I'm not familiar with all of them, but I have not heard that the pride flag has been banned. I think in reference to my statement, it relates to the regulations of the order of precedence of the flag being on a flagpole, that the U.S. flag must take a position of prominence to any other flag. And in deference to the U.S. flag code, that was the statement made in my staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Risto.
Before I charge into a motion, I just wanted to put some thoughts out there. I know that with Rosenberg's rule of order, we're supposed to start with a motion, but indulge me for a couple of minutes. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is when we did have the United Against Hate March, we had, in our council chambers, been experiencing an incredibly high degree of hatred pointed specifically toward our former mayor and a number of other people in the community. And, you know, sitting back and trying to be neutral about that would have been absolutely the wrong thing. And there were over 3,000 people that spoke up, and our community came together in a unified way. And I know that not only our mayor and her family, but everybody that felt persecuted in that situation felt like the community had their back. And I know that the town council stood with our mayor. When I think about what it means if we fly the flag, I think there's not a question of neutrality. At this point, because we're having a discussion about it, voting against it is sending a message. When I think about whether we're talking about one group versus another, this isn't specifically like a political discussion or a war where you've got one side or another. We have an entire stripe of people that fit into the LGBTQ community that are across all political parties, in every single nationality and country, of every religion. It's a cross-section of our entire society and our planet, and it's part of Los Gatos. And, you know, when I hear people talk about their fear or hatred being focused toward them, we are on town council to be leaders. If voting for this gets my name put on somebody's SUV, I can handle that. I'm not a high school student who doesn't feel support. And words don't hurt me. And I'm here to be an ally, to help protect people, and to elevate the message that we say that we hold as a value in our community of inclusiveness, of support, of welcoming. And I want to make sure that every resident and visitor and employee in our town comes and sees that message of support. New Mu flies the pride flag, Mid-Penn flies the pride flag, the terraces of Los Gatos fly the pride flag. And when you've got these one-off islands, it is almost screamingly obvious that Los Gatos should be doing it. And us not doing it sends a message as well. So that's where I'm kind of hanging right here. And I don't know if I can answer Councilmember Rennie's questions, but to me, it's a question of saying that you are seen, you are supported, you have allies, and this is a value in this community.
Thank you. Councilmember Badami.
I may remain neutral on the flagpole per item number 12, but this council, with the exception of Mayor Moore, who had not yet become an elected official, supported the Pride community 365 days a year, continuously, I think for the past 5-6 years, and not just 31 days out of a year, by painting 2 Pride crosswalks between the high school coming across to Town Hall. Those crosswalks are symbolic, they're inclusive, and they're very welcoming.
Okay, still looking for a motion. Vice Mayor Risto.
All right, seeing no other comments, I will jump in wholeheartedly. I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the display of the Progress Pride flag at Town Hall during the month of June 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Hudis?
Yeah, I'll second. Also, we now are moving into discussion.
Please.
And I would just like to say that, listening very carefully to our residents, not only the ones who are here tonight, but also ones who spoke previously, I am very supportive of raising the Progress Pride flag. I think it will be helpful to our community. And, regarding the fear of picking one ideology over another, I really don't think that's the case here at all, because I think as I listened to the voices, I came to understand that this is not about people's ideologies, but it's about people's identities, and that people don't necessarily choose those identities. Those identities are inherent to them, and I think it's very important that we provide support for all in our community. So I will be, of course, supporting the motion, but I will be vigilant in the future about not taking flags that are for ideologies. I don't think that's the proper role for municipal government speech.
Thank you. Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I said, I was hesitant for us to wade into this government speech area. Now that we've waded, let me wade into this issue. I think from the question I asked, and I want to thank the young person for letting me put her on the spot there. From my question, you got a lot of my thinking on this. Of course, I'm supportive of the Pride community. I think there was an argument other cities have done this, yada, yada, yada. But what I've observed is our city is a little bit different. There seems to be a lot more hate here. So I'm sensitive about doing things that don't generate more hate. I think the other cities have had the, I'm going to call it a luxury of not having to worry about nearly as much of the hate. I mean, I lived through that quite a bit. So I think about, as my question said, the balance between let's make sure we don't generate more hate while supporting people. And I think the number one important thing is the town should be supporting groups against hate, and we did that the last time we saw a lot of it. I just want to make sure we don't generate it again if we can avoid it, but if it is generated, we're going to support those people that have felt the hate. Listening carefully, it does sound like this flag can help support the people that have been feeling the hate. So, although I don't think this was a no-brainer, as some said, as I'm thinking through it carefully, I will be able to support this. I'm hoping that we don't generate more hate from it, but it's now that we've taken the step to have this as a possibility, it's worth taking the opportunity to see if we can make things better without making them worse. Let me just check my notes, make sure I said everything I was thinking about. I think that I covered it. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Stowe.
Thank you. Councilmember Rennie, your comment made me think of another point I wanted to make, and I would say that I don't think raising the flag will generate hate. It may expose the hate that already exists, and I think if we're lifting the rock up and we see the hate, that's another reason why we need to raise this flag. And if people want to express their displeasure, that's their First Amendment right. But I don't think the flag itself generates the hatred. The hatred is there, and it's just a matter of whether people feel free to express it or not.
Thank you. So I'll jump in with my thoughts. I'll just start by saying I think that a community reveals its character not just in what it tolerates, but by what it chooses to affirm. And I think that is the question before us this evening. I want to begin by thanking the many residents, from high school students to longtime community leaders, who came forward to share their stories both this evening and when we discussed this item in December. Your presence makes clear that this discussion is not abstract. It is about our neighbors, our children, and our friends. I strongly support adopting the resolution before us this evening to raise the Progress Pride flag this June. What stood out to me most over the course of the discussion over the past 6 months or so is the diverse set of residents who have asked us to take this step. High school students have spoken to us rather articulately, both this evening and in the past. Parents have written to us, and longtime residents have shared deeply moving personal stories. I don't think this is a narrow or a fringe request. I think it reflects a broad cross-section of our town who believe that this issue matters. This decision matters because symbols matter. Flying the pride flag will not solve every challenge facing our LGBTQ residents, but it does send a clear, unmistakable message. You are seen, you belong here, and our town stands with you. At a time when LGBTQ+ rights are being debated across the country, visible acts of affirmation carry real weight. In 2024, FBI data showed that over 21% of all reported hate crimes across our country were based on sexual orientation or gender ideology, despite only about 9% of the population identifying as LGBTQ+. That disparity tells us something important. This community, the LGBTQ+ community, remains disproportionately targeted and marginalized. Closer to home, in neighboring Palo Alto, 2 transgender teens have died by suicide in the last 10 months. Their deaths are heartbreaking reminders that LGBTQ+ youth often carry pressures that many of their peers do not. We hope and pray that nothing like that ever happens here in Los Gatos, and while a flag alone cannot prevent tragedy, visible affirmation from trusted institutions, including from our local government, in our flag poles in front of Town Hall, is one small but meaningful way to help young people know they are not alone. As I've shared before, Los Gatos has a complicated history on this issue. There have been times when members of our community have felt unseen and unwelcome, and though while we cannot change the past, we can choose what message we send moving forward. I believe that raising this flag does not divide Los Gatos. Instead, it defines who we are and what we stand for. This action tells our entire community that this town believes in all, it believes that all belong and that all are welcome. For those reasons, I will be supporting this resolution to move forward with a Progress Pride flag raising in June 2026. Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you all. Thank you. So because it is just about 9 o'clock, the town council will now take a brief 7 to 10 minute break, and we will reconvene. Let's do 9:10. Thank you. All right. I'm going to reconvene this meeting of the Los Gatos Town Council for our riveting mid-year budget. So this item is to receive the 2025-2026 mid-year budget report, including end-of-year projections. Christina Alfaro, our Administrative Services Director, will present the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Here with you this evening to present the mid-year budget report along with the 26-27 updated forecast. The purpose of the mid-year report is to provide the Town Council with the status of the adopted fiscal year 25-26 operating budget after the first 6 months of the fiscal year, and to make any adjustments to ensure the continuity of municipal services and operations for the remainder of the fiscal year. This report is one of several periodic updates to the Town Council on the status of the current year's revenues and expenditures and the projected financial condition of all town funds compared with the adopted operating budget. The update typically focuses on the town's general fund. This is because this is the town's largest fund and also where the council has the most discretion. In addition, we will also be discussing changes to the 5-year forecast. You can advance the slide. Thank you. I won't read through this slide, but this is the recommendations before the council's consideration this evening. With that, we'll jump right into the presentation. We can go to the next slide. Kind of starting with some major takeaways from this mid-year financial report. We've seen the town's financial forecast and conditions improve. This is mostly being driven by increased sales tax estimates. Sales tax is generally received about 6 months in arrears. So we're making our best estimate for the end of the year, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's driving some of the sales tax estimates later in the presentation. Deficits are still present, but have been reduced. So with that, I also want to start off with, we gave this presentation, or in a very similar format to the Finance Commission last Monday. So I wanted to go over some of their questions or comments regarding the mid-year. First is there was a question regarding, as you'll see later in the presentation, a recommendation to decrease expenditures in the equipment fund. And the question was related to, because the equipment fund is an internal service fund, which means it's a fund that charges out other user departments for their functions. If we had missed an offsetting reduction in expenses in the general or other funds that use vehicles and equipment. At the meeting, we were able to answer that it's not a one-to-one charge out. We could see that in the adopted budget book that showed about half of the expenses of the vehicle fund being charged out to departments. Upon further research, we find that we do not need to make an additional expenditure adjustment down for the other funds. This is because of how this internal service fund is set up. We look at vehicles and equipment that need to be replaced over a long-term horizon. And then we adjust the budget or the charges to the departments up or down to either increase fund balance, knowing we're going to have a significant amount of purchases in the future, or we may decrease the charges if we need to use some of that fund balance. And what it ultimately results in is more of a smoothing pattern on the operating budget. There were also some other minor corrections that we made. There was a typo, I believe, on the first page of the report that had a previous expenditure number that had been updated. There were also questions regarding miscellaneous other category and what items were included in there. And in the miscellaneous other category, we have Measure G proceeds, pension trust fund contributions, and sale of property. Lastly, attachment 5, and this was actually staff noted this was corrected, the table on page 4 of attachment 1 to remove the double count of debt service from the revenue categories. And this resulted in our adopted budget in that table matching what's currently in our adopted budget. So with that, we'll move over to a summary of general fund revenues and expenses. And so what this table is, it's a summary of the table we were just discussing in the previous slide that we made corrections to. What it does is it shows you that very first column. It shows you our fiscal year 25 actuals. So revenues were $61.8 million, expenses at $57 million, which resulted in revenues over expenditures for a positive $5.7 million. The next takes our fiscal year actuals as of December 2024, and you'll see revenues were at 19 million, expenditures at 24.9, and at the mid-year point of the year last year, we were showing a $5.8 million deficit. This is actuals, not budget. What we also note is the percentage collected or spent. So we were 31% collected on our revenues and 44% collected on our expenses. When we get to the mid-year point of this fiscal year, we're 34% collected in our revenue, so slightly higher, about 3% higher than we were collected last year, and our expenses stay at about 44% of the budget as of the mid-year. When we're looking at our actuals as of December 31st, 2025, we see our revenues are tracking at 21.8 million, expenses at 26.3 million, and overall looking at a revenue over expenditures of a negative 4.5 million. Our fiscal year 26 budget had us revenues at 59.9, expenditures at 60.4, for a revenue over expense of about $500,000. The next three columns show where our adjusted budget, legal or amended. There's many terms for it, but it's basically the adopted budget and any adjustments that have been made through December 31st, 2025. Revenues are at 63.4, expenses at 62.5, and now we have a positive revenue over expenditures of about 0.3 million. The next column shows the recommended mid-year adjustments for the general fund. So revenues being recommended to increase by 3.6 million, expenses being recommended to increase by 1.4 million, and then revenues over expenditures coming in at 2.3 million. Now, the very last column shown here, what this column does is it takes where departments are estimating to end the fiscal year for revenues and expenses, and then overlays the mid-year budget adjustments on top of them. So you won't be able to get to this column from the other columns listed here, but what we did try to do with this column is kind of show our best guesstimate of where we think we're going to end the year, and looking to end the year at a positive 4.3 million. With that, we can go to the next slide. This slide is really just meant to summarize where the adjustments that we are recommending are located. First, you'll see the general fund listed at the top, and we have expenditures and revenues listed out by departments. Overall, in the general fund, as I mentioned earlier, we're recommending expenditure increases of 1,350,141, offset by revenue increases of 3,581,888. When we look at all the other funds, so all the funds outside of the general fund, we're overall recommending an expenditure decrease of 1,255,561 and revenue decreases of 96,000. So with that, we'll move into the general fund revenue adjustments. We can go to the next slide. So these slides, I tried to put a lot of detail in. There's also a lot of detail in the staff report, but I'll go over kind of some of the major items here, and if there's any questions, we can always come back to the slides. So taxes overall, we're recommending to increase by 1.27 million. This is being driven primarily by sales tax and Measure G, and this is really from an updated forecast from our new sales tax consultant, HDL, along with new businesses that we anticipate having in our forecast. This is one that we'll watch closely to see if any additional adjustments need to be made before the end of the fiscal year. So with that, another major one I did want to touch on here is our transient occupancy tax is trending lower than we had expected based on the first 6 months of collection. So we're asking to make an adjustment to TOT tax as well. Moving on to additional general fund drivers. Here we see licenses and permits increasing by 675,000. That's really being driven by our planning fees and our building permits, as well as a tree removal permit at 180,000. Moving on to the next slide, here I'm really going to focus on the town services or charges for services, which is increasing by 967,821. The bulk of this is being driven by pass-through revenues at 595,500. I do want to note that I put, just a correction, the pass-through revenues should say $615,500. The $20,000 difference is that in our detailed revenue adjustments, there was a certain revenue source that didn't say pass-through on the revenue side, but it did say it on the expense side. So just wanted to make that correction because you will be off when we get to the expense slides. So here, we see your pass-through revenues that actually should be $615,000, and then plan check revenues at $350,000, really leading the increased revenues here. Moving on to the next slide, we have our other category, which is recommended to increase by $692,000. This is mostly being driven by our pension trust fund contribution. As we originally didn't budget this amount, we were anticipating a deficit last year, but coming in a positive, we are asking to make this contribution. So this effectively increases our pension contribution. Also, interest is trending higher as well, so we're recommending a $345,487 adjustment there. Moving on to the general fund expenditure request. So again, these are recommended at approximately $1.4 million. And we look at the town attorney, we're asking for $100,000 for increased outside legal costs. And administrative services overall, an increase of $153,305. This is mostly being driven by, looks like there is a unhoused services grant that's been reduced, Leadership Academy here, but the biggest item is really salary and benefit changes to account for the double fill or the additional, what's the word I'm looking for additional services from our retired finance director to help backfill with the transition for myself. It's important to note about half of this will be refunded by our compensated absences fund. With that, moving on, our Community Development Department is requesting $502,500 in additional expenses. The bulk of that, $615,500, is pass-through expenses, which means we have the corresponding revenue on the other side. And then there's also offset by reductions in contract employee services and building inspections. For our police department, overall, the request is $93,370. The bulk of it here is really related to a police services study and also some increased costs for drug test and a wellness grant. And if we move on to the next slide, we have our Parks and Public Works with expenditure request of $200,775. This is really mostly driven by a few items here, but miscellaneous services and repairs, tree pruning service, and traffic signalization. On our town-wide expenses, we're recommending this increase by $300,191, and this is really mostly driven by the additional 115 pension trust payment, for which we saw the offsetting revenue in a previous slide. In addition, here we're also reducing $88,000 from the budget for a duplicate agreement that was included. We found it and wanted to go ahead and reduce the budget to align with actuals. That concludes the general fund request. Looking at the other fund request, we're seeing a $96,000 revenue decrease, which is really driven by a reduction in facilities maintenance costs for the Saratoga Recreation District based on the current agreement term. Expenditures are being recommended to decrease by $1,255,561. This is primarily driven by decreases in the equipment replacement fund due to staff identifying which replacements can be deferred in alignment with council direction. This is offset by increases in capital expenses in the JFAR to make use of vehicle registration funds and reserves. An additional $50,000 is for sound mitigation at La Rinconada Park. And additionally, an expenditures increase of $47,500 in the GFAR, $437,500 in the GFAR Interim Community Center for various improvements as described in the staff report. So with that, that brings us to our 5-year forecast update. And we're going to kind of do a little bit of a repeat of a slide here. Again, so this still holds true for the forecast as well. that we're going to see an improved financial forecasting conditions. This is driven primarily, again, by sales tax increases. Deficits are still present, but have been greatly reduced. And then when we're looking at the updates that have been made, as listed in the staff report, we're really comparing fiscal year 26-27 to fiscal year 26-27 as it was presented as part of the adopted budget. So with that, as a little reminder, this was the 5-year projections as of the final budget with a little rectangle around our fiscal year 26-27 that originally had an estimated deficit of or use of fund balance of 3.6 million. And then if you're looking out into the out years, you'll see our highest deficit year being fiscal year 28-29 at $5 million. When we look at the updated chart as of 2/6/26, again, we still have that highlight on the fiscal year 26-27. That has dropped from 3.6 to 3.1 million. But in fiscal year 28-29, you'll see a larger impact of the additional sales tax revenue, where we are forecasting, instead of a $5 million deficit, a $2.7 million deficit. And if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of talk about what are the major drivers that are bringing revenue up to 2.1 million. Some we've already discussed, so sales tax and Measure G. Some of these are offset by decreases in licenses and permits, in TOT, but other modest increases in town services and interest earnings as well. Moving on to the expense side of the forecast. Here, some major drivers include some smaller items, decreased CalPERS benefit assumptions. All other benefits decreased by almost $500,000. The biggest increase here is related to operating expenditures, which are anticipated to increase by $1.7 million for townwide contractually obligated expenditures, and a shift to a subscription-based model for various public safety equipment, and increase in the town's share of retiree medical reimbursement. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm available should there be any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, thank you for really a very clear report and terrific communications about what is the financial situation with our town. I think we've continued to make substantial progress in getting our arms around financial management, and I think this report conveys that very, very well. I did want to just maybe ask a question about the 5-year, because, so my understanding is that we have an analysis going on that 5-year that could make this projection maybe change sometime in the next 6 months or so. Is that right?
That's correct. So we do have NHA advisors working on an updated forecast, but because we had received some additional information on the sales tax, we wanted to make sure we brought an updated forecast that was in line with some of the information we provided to them as well.
Yeah. So I'm, just conveying that I'm not very concerned about what we're seeing in the 5-year until we see that updated report, which I think will present us with some other considerations that we might want to make. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rennie? Sure, we can open public comment before we really get into it. Any other clarifying questions for staff? No? Okay. Then we have one public comment, and that is from Lee Fago.
Good evening. Speaking as a long-term resident, not representing any group, these amendments, these changes have been very interesting and a little challenging to follow, but I'm glad to see the work that you're doing and the transparency that's coming through as well. It looks as though the town is reporting a financial surplus for the current fiscal year, and that's really good. But let's look ahead, and I think to the point that Councilmember Hudis was making. The 5-year forecast, as I saw it, shows a structural financial deficit, and it ranges between $3 and $5 million over each of the next 5 years. That concern that I have is really about the spending increases. Are those increases really serving our town? That's the question. Is it serving the town properly? And how well are we managing the funds we have, the investments that we have, and the property that we have in order to keep the costs down? Can we please find real substantive solutions, such as cost reductions, further cost reductions, and not just rely on the tax increases? We also have a challenge in front of us of more than 2,000 new housing units that are to be built in our town, and these are projected to be built in sites that were not within the housing element. And they're of a manner, a style, a size, and in locations that are going to be very costly for the town to support and maintain. And I think we need to find ways to recover or defer those costs back to the developers, whatever legal way we can. And these costs of this new infrastructure requirements for these new developments are going to really compound the cost to the other residents in town, not just the new ones coming in. So please consider all that as you're looking at budgeting going forward and how to manage the expenditures. And please, let's not just raise property taxes on the current residents to offset that, but rather let's find some other ways of reducing the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll go back to Councilman Bereni.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So when I read this, the first thing that I looked at was in our report, page 4 of attachment 1, which is the big table of numbers. And what I'm most interested in is the expenditure side and how are each of the departments doing. And I think most of it I can understand, except community development, parks, and public works are the two areas that I'm interested in. The first question, at first I got lost on the pass-through and what that meant and which of these are pass-through. And your presentation has kind of shifted my understanding a little bit. Let me start with my first question. So I think it just dawned on me, and I may have missed it if it's in the report. This is not just how the departments have done for half of the year. This is what you're expecting them to do for the full year. And so our revenue looks better. And in the beginning of the year, we cut back on some things. And so now part of these increases, or a lot of these increases, and speak to the two departments I mentioned, are really about going forward for the rest of the year. We want to increase spending in those departments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that basically says they've done a good job of sticking with their budget, and now we realize we have a little extra money and we think these are good places to spend it. Explain to me, what are pass-through revenues? What things fall under pass-through? Because at first I started thinking, well, if somebody comes in and gives us some money for a development, they're going to be paying for a plan review. They're going to be paying for engineering services review. So I'm thinking, okay, well, that goes into, if it's more than we expected, that might be more revenue and work that went into PPW and CCD. But maybe that's not the case when I start reading some of your slides.
So I think pass-through revenues have more than one definition. So in terms of sometimes you can do it with a development agreement where you say, hey, we're not going to staff up because of this big development that's happening, but we understand there's going to be a lot of planning and permit and building things that need to occur. As part of a development agreement, you might say, hey, we're going to we're going to go out and we're going to render these additional services that we need to complete this review that we need to do timely. And then what we would do is we would go out and get those services. You can charge the developer for those services if you have a development agreement. So the revenue basically passes through the town, where we have to go make the expense. We already have the offsetting revenue. And so they should net out to zero. In other instances where it's not a development agreement, but there is additional work or work that needs to happen within a certain time frame, you may contract with an outside vendor or consultant who provides these services. And similarly, you contract with them, you need them to go do a building inspection, you go, hey, I need you to do this building inspection. They go do the building inspection, they bill back the town for those services, and then the town then realizes the revenues that were paid by whoever needed those services down from the deposit we took when they first got there. So those are kind of the two major ones that I'm aware of that cities or towns normally do.
Okay, so continuing on with that, so under your explanation of the general fund expenditure pages for community development, you've assigned all of the pass-through. You claim there's 615,500 pass-through expenses. You've assigned it all to community development. I would have expected to see some in Parks and Public Works. So what I think I'm hearing you say is Parks and Public Works hasn't contracted out any engineering review or anything like that, so it didn't turn into a pass-through.
Or at least that they're not asking for additional dollars related to it. So these are here for community development because there's been additional pass-throughs that happened, and they want to account for those.
Councilmember Rennie, it looks like the development director wanted to jump in.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. So typically, to your question, Councilmember Rennie, the pass-through accounts are where our consultants, as Ms. Alfaro mentioned, which are environmental consultants, building plan check consultants, consulting architect, consulting arborist, water efficient landscape. The other pass-throughs that are sometimes big are like the objective design standards, where we contracted with a firm who's going through that work as well. So there's a number of those listed in our pass-through account, and so we're just trying to match that up, seeing an increased revenue and or expenditure depending on the situation, and so we're trying to true that up as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. And again, with the Parks and Public Works side, your summary helped me understand where the 200,000 was coming from, because I thought some of it might have been passed through when it's not, and it makes sense what's on there. If I look at Parks and Public Works, on the revenue side, they're down money, it looks like, on engineering review and grading and building inspections. So does that mean, well, which sounds sort of odd, if we have all this extra development money coming into CCD, why did we have less money coming in for engineering reviews and grading and building inspections in the PPW department?
Looks like Director Burnham has an answer to that question.
Thank you. Nicole Burnham, Director of Parks and Public Works. I may be able to shed a little light on this. I think the revenue decrease that we're looking at is for actual permit fees, not related to pass-through. I think the fact that we don't have any pass-through revenue changes in mid-year is just reflective of the fact that we kind of had anticipated a lot of our revenue. We pass through almost all of our work, a very significant amount. So we, at the beginning of the year, sort of had a pretty good handle on what we were going to pass through and what that revenue was going to be.
Okay, so but it sounds like we're, I'm trying to find the right way to say this, but you're short 135,000 in revenue, so that meant maybe we're overstaffed because we thought there was going to be more work to do?
It means that when we prepared our projected budget going into this fiscal year, we made an assumption about how much revenue we were going to generate on permits based on past application revenue, and that this year's application revenue has been down. And the application revenue might be single-family homes, it could be grading permits, it can be pools. There's a lot of different things that go into it, whereas like our big ticket items related to like North 40 and some of the larger developments, those are going pretty much straight into pass-through accounts. And so I think we're seeing fewer applications somewhere along the line that are coming to us, whereas CDD has, based on their projections that they had at the beginning of the fiscal year, they're seeing more.
Okay. Again, that sort of sounds odd to me that they're doing more business and you're doing less, but I think that's all. I'll stop my questions there.
Okay, great. We'll go to Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, I actually have quite a few questions, but I wanted to start with the discussion on page 2 of 5 of the staff report about vehicle replacement internal service fund. And so I had a little trouble following the text here. It seems as though our internal service fund was about 3.9 million last year. And are we saying that, is staff now saying that we're not going to include a decrease in that fund? It says, upon further research, staff does not believe an expenditure adjustment is needed.
That's correct. After reviewing the expenses as of the mid-year, staff is recommending that we reduce that budget down significantly. It was a little over 2 million in the adopted, and we're asking to reduce it by about 1.8 million.
And so I'm having trouble with the sentence. Upon further research, staff does not believe an expenditure adjustment is needed.
Oh, this is related to, sorry, I misunderstood the question. We're saying that based on Finance Commission had asked the question, should there be a corresponding $1.8 million expenditure reduction in the other funds that utilize the vehicle and replacement fund? So anybody receiving vehicles or equipment from this fund that get charged out for it. Upon further review, we looked at that, and because we're not fully charging out these expenses on an annual basis, we're basically trying to create more of a smooth operating expense. So in some years we collect more, in some years we collect less, depending on what purchases are coming up over the long-term horizon. So when we looked at that model, we felt it wasn't necessary to make an expenditure adjustment in the general fund or any other fund that would receive vehicles or equipment.
Okay, and if I may just follow up on that, my concern has been in this area for some time, that, do we have excessive expenditures on vehicles? And, I believe we're told that we have an inventory of over 80 vehicles and equipment, and some of that is only used occasionally. And I am concerned that we are incurring maintenance costs and storage costs for equipment that may be, in fact, obsoleted because of a move to electric requirements as well. And so I'm really interested in getting our arms around this. And my sort of back of the envelope was that we could divest ourselves of half of those vehicles and, gain some immediate savings, as well as the savings on the maintenance costs and the storage costs, and move to more of a rental and lease model on some of that equipment. I mean, are we going to probe further into that area?
So it's my understanding we are looking at having someone conduct an audit of our vehicles and equipment. I don't have an exact date for that yet, but that is on the horizon.
Okay. So I won't harp on that in the budget review, because I think there's something coming there that I think could be helpful, but it does stand out to me, the large fund that we have to keep and the large number of vehicles. I have questions in other areas, but I'll defer to other people.
Sure, okay, I'll jump in with a couple quick questions. So at a very high level, and I think I heard this, but this is everything we're looking at here is somewhere where there is an incorrect assumption or it's something has changed and we need to make an adjustment, right? So at a high level, that's what we're dealing with?
Yes.
Perfect. So I have 3 of these items that I wanted to ask about at this time. One is the unhoused services grant. What happened?
For the unhoused services grant, this is actually a grant we received in the previous year. It had been spent in the previous year, but when we were doing the mid-year analysis, we realized it was still there in the current year, so we wanted to remove that out.
Got it. And did this have something to do with us budgeting for a county grant for 3 years and not? No, that's different. Okay. Got it. Transient occupancy tax, is that largely from, my assumption there is that's because we lost a hotel. Is that or is it just down generally?
I think it's just down generally. So that's part of that feeds into that. That was already in the assumptions for this year's adopted budget. What we're seeing is the numbers are still continuing to come in lower, even when we had put that assumption in.
Got it. And are we, and this is hard to know, and probably a question for our economic vitality manager, but are we anticipating an increase from some of the the regional events, or is that probably a non-factor?
We don't have any information in terms of that at this time.
Okay. And so building this coming year's budget, we will likely reduce even further our assumptions on the transient occupancy tax?
I think it's going to depend on how we end the year. So we'll get a few more months underneath our belt here before we have to make the assumptions for the proposed budget. So we'll likely be looking at all the different factors that go into TOT and kind of trying to decide what the right number is at that point.
Okay. And then I'll go to Councilmember Hudis after this one because I realize I'm jumping around now. But on the interim community center, so that's a fund we have, correct? And so this is to pull from that fund to pay for deferred maintenance.
It's to pay for several repairs at the adult community center.
Okay, and what is the nature of those?
Mold remediation, window replacement, and roof work, which will allow us to activate a room that's currently being unused and to continue to sustain the structure of the community center. There's a number of other identified repairs that were identified in the 2023 assessment. This also goes in line with the motion that was passed by the council on April 15, 2023 about the use of ARPA funding. And in going through that motion, there was nothing in the motion that explicitly restricted those funds not to be used for the type of expenditures we're proposing.
And how much does this leave in the remaining in the fund? If this were to pass?
Approximately 4,000. I can get you the exact number. Just
$4,000.
400,000. Sorry, 400,000. I left a zero off.
Where'd it go? Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, I wanted to start with that one. So in reading the description, I don't see anything there that's improvements. I see everything there that is deferred maintenance. And the discussion intent and the motion was to for that money to be used for improvements for the public. Isn't that correct?
The tenor of the motion surrounded providing use for nonprofits, which is something we've done, and secondly, for the use for enhancing the use of that building, and that was to be done in the 2024 budget. I don't know what action was actually done by the 2024. But in looking at the facility, if we can't maintain and restore the building to its full use, then we would be looking at impairment to the building. And this is something that we have an obligation under the current lease agreement with LGS Rec. The council can, if they desire, choose an alternate funding source as opposed to the community center fund. But best practice in finance is you utilize the most restricted source before you go to a less restrictive like the unrestricted general fund. In this case, the community center fund is central to the interim community center. and I believe a legitimate use unless the council deems otherwise.
Well, again, I would strongly disagree. It was set up for improvements, not for deferred maintenance. But I'm, we'll get into discussion after there's a motion, but I am pretty clear on what that discussion and what that motion was for. The other thing I wanted to come back to on TOT, and again, I'm very disappointed to see TOT decreasing. I know that we are losing TOT because of the loss of the lodge, but I believe that was in the plan, and where budget intersects with policy, again, I am very concerned that we're not making enough efforts to market Los Gatos as a celebration destination, and that working with partners in the hospitality business and the short-term rentals. So again, we're looking at this year's budget, a decrease. I think we're going to have to approve that, but in terms of looking at the 5-year, which is also part of what we're looking at tonight, I am not supportive of seeing that decline in our budget, because that means that's what we're going to hit. I'd like to see us do something different in that. So it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy that we end up seeing a decrease when Los Gatos should be the most thriving destination for celebrations in the whole region, and that'll boost everything in our community: the retail, the restaurants, the value to our residents as well. So my comment is more about the 5-year than the budget on that one. I did have another one. The concern that I have is again about some text in here that talks about anticipating a $3 million receipt for selling real estate property. And again, I don't think there's a budget item here, but I think there's a concern that money would get consumed in our day-to-day operations, when my comment on that is that needs to be something for community benefit. And so my question is, are we tackling the use of those funds tonight, or is that just a comment that's in the staff report that it might be coming?
It's just a comment in the staff report. We're not handling the property has not sold yet, so those funds have not come in.
Okay, and with regard to that, my own view is that we shouldn't even sell that property if we don't consider putting it to good community benefit, the proceeds being put to good community benefit. And so I hope we'll get to that in our next discussion about the budget, where we talk about the proceeds from this, or will it be just in the real estate transaction that we'll talk about it?
I believe the sale of the property does need to come back to the council.
The sale does need to come back to the council. The council has already taken action to direct the sale of said property with no restriction on the use of the funds at this time, but the council can designate any proceeds in whatever manner they desire with regards to the building. There are limitations that when the town sells a building that has restricted funds that were used to acquire that property, those must go back into said funds. So for example, if you had a special housing fund that paid for a piece of property and there's revenue that's returned, it must go back to that source. In researching this, we did not find a community benefit. I mean, I guess I should reframe that. Did not find a restricted revenue source that was used for that building. So the desire to make it a community benefit is a policy desire of the council that you would be establishing?
Yeah, it would be hard to find that. It goes back to the early 1900s. So it was, you know, it was a firehouse, definitely community benefit. It was a museum for many years, definitely community benefit. So we're going to have to come back to that one again, I think. I had one more question, and that is on the overall need to make an adjustment of the 1.35 million. If I could just maybe get some clarity on that, it seems as though that 1.35 million is just to essentially take funds from one department to another. Is there really the need to make it a budget adjustment of 1.35 million?
So when we look at the pass-through revenues, about half of that amount, a little less than half, is really related to pass-through. So you want to account for the revenue and the expense side. So on those, I would say, because you want to account for both, you would want to make those adjustments. When we look at our year-end projections, we're looking to end our expenditure category or our expenditures lower than our budgeted amount. We asked departments to make projections for where they're going to end the fiscal year in January with 5 months left to spend. So we do ask them to provide us a most accurate forecast. But if we end the year, they may still need those funds. So they're making the assumptions in January for what may happen for the next 5 months. So we don't actually come and make a budget adjustment unless we know something has changed, either to reduce it or to increase it. So if we're asking for the adjustment, it's something that we've seen that's different from the trajectory we had at final budget, and that's why those requests are being made at this time.
So you're saying it is absolutely necessary to do the 1.35 million?
You were saying
there's
that
no other alternative?
Let me step in there. No, I can't say it's absolutely necessary to do anything. What I can say is the way our practice has been is as we're looking at the budget, we're making estimates about what is needed in the mid-year for specific items, and based on information that we know, what do we sweep away because there's transactions that you can see that we're reducing in the budget. And then we're also at the same time asking departments to estimate how they believe they're going to end the year as a mechanism to assist us in our budget planning processes. Had we not done that second component, there would be no ability to even ask the question whether or not you need these funds. If the council desires not to make any changes, then I can reconfigure the entire budget around zero additional dollars coming in, and then making operational decisions on what activities we would be concerned about not having funds available towards the end of the year and just suspend those activities.
Thank you.
One more question on the franchise fees. Do we, and I don't know if you would know the answer to this, do we anticipate we have two large Frontier wireless locations in Los Gatos, and Frontier just got acquired by Verizon. Do we anticipate that having any impact on the ability for us to collect franchise fees or anything else?
That I don't know off the top of my head, so I'll have to get back to you on that.
I'm curious how we, more bigger question, I think, than the confines of this discussion, but I'm curious if we anticipate that impacting, the community in any way, because I think both of those are very key locations, and I think one we might even have an interest in. So
at this time, I didn't even know they got acquired, so thank you for that
information.
Yeah,
just a few weeks ago. So great. Okay, Councilmember Rennie.
So you might have said something, but the repackaging of the information, I was kind of hard to listen and think about everything in here. One thing that was a surprise to me was to see the big change in the sales tax revenue. Los Gatos has never been that strong on sales tax. We always seem to be losing a little bit and behind everybody else. And so when I see a change of 1.6 million, that's unusual. I don't know that I've seen that in the 11 plus years that I've been here. So I'm trying to understand, is this a change going forward? Was this a one-time lucky item? Did the way that sales tax calculated or internet sales tax change or something? Why are we at 1.6 and are we going to stay there is basically my question.
So to the first question, we do anticipate this is not a one-time item, that it will carry through. It's part of why we're seeing the improvements in the forecast. And it's really driven by two major components. One is related to our switch in our sales tax consultant. So we have someone different looking at our numbers, forecasting those numbers out. And the other is due to some additional new businesses that have come into the town that are having a positive impact on sales tax.
Yeah, but if I can follow up. So our actual in 24-25 was just under 7 million, and now we're this year at 7.8 million. That still seems like a bigger growth than I've typically seen.
It's the nature of the businesses. However, we have not received any of the sales tax. These are projections based on how our consultant anticipates allocations that would occur to these type of businesses in various cities. That still can change between now and the end of the fiscal year. And so we project that with some level of confidence that we will receive those revenues, but it's not an absolute guarantee to receive as much. However, based on the projections of our consultants, the number that we baked into the budget in the mid-year is on the lower end of the range the consultant believes that these businesses would generate for the town.
And again, I'll ask this question a different way. This is brick and mortar sales tax or internet sales tax bump?
Let me just say it this way. I don't want to say anything further for fear of providing confidential information about the nature of our sales tax. But I will say that the nature of the business transactions would be of an ongoing nature that would be affected by economic downturns and upswings.
Okay. And did our consultant, I think we've talked about this somewhere else, but our housing element sites and our builder's remedy sites are going to wipe out a bunch of commercial areas. Was that considered? Clearly this year they aren't going to be gone, but it sounds like you're planning to use these improved numbers going into the 5-year forecast, and in 5 years, many of these businesses will be gone with the housing sitting on top of them.
No, they're not included in the projections. However, we need to understand that since we have access to data that's granular, that allows us to understand the total gross revenue and net sales tax that we would receive on those businesses. And we fluctuate day to day with businesses coming and going, and the majority of the businesses that tend to be impacted, the dollar amount swings are not necessarily massively material. There are some businesses that do generate significant amount of sales tax. In our town, about 25% of our 25 businesses generate about 50% of the total sales tax for the town. And so if you lose 5 or 6 businesses because of a development, some of that could be made up in other businesses elsewhere. But the variance between two it's not $1 million swing that you would see potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't really have more questions. I'm willing to put a motion on the table.
Sure, please.
So first part was receive, so there's no motion required for that. I believe there's a motion required for 3 parts, or to authorize the budget adjustment of $3,581,888 in revenues and $1,350,141 in increases in expenses as recommended in the mid-year budget report. I would add one thing to the motion, and that is that the source of the money for the deferred maintenance repairs on the on the Adult Recreation Center be taken from the, if possible, from the Streets and Transportation Fund if it's not restricted, or from the general fund if it is, if it's not available. So that's the motion.
So we would not be able to take it from the Streets and Transportation Fund. You could take it from the general fund. I might propose another option, which is our Fund 411 or our GFAR that is in specifically for the community center. So when we look on page, I'm kind of where I'm getting these numbers, page 33 of attachment 1, it's capital project fund, kind of a summary. You'll see that the GFAR, or what's Fund 411, currently has $16,974,945. That's where they began the year with their fund balance. If you go ahead and you add the $4.4 million in budgeted revenues and you deduct the about $16.8 million in budgeted expenditures, then you're left with a projected ending fund balance of about $4,497,642. If you were to then further reduce it by moving this expense out of that fund versus the 412 or the GFAR for the community center, you'd be looking at an estimated ending fund balance of about $4 million. So there is sufficient there if you wanted to keep it within the capital, if that's just a suggestion I wanted to make instead of using unassigned.
I think that's wise to do that, to use capital rather than operating for that.
Yes, because it's considered a capital expense. And again, as the town manager mentioned earlier, more restrictions on the capital fund. So you want to use those dollars when projects become available to use those versus the unassigned fund balance that has less restrictions.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I get to the right page for that, or do I need to restate anything in my motion?
The motion's clear to me that it's authorizing the expenses, except 400. The interim is pulling from the. The repairs are pulling from the GFAR. Okay, we have a motion. Councilmember Rennie?
I'll second the motion. I understand staff's perspective of using the most restricted funds available, but in this case, we restricted the funds for a council priority, so we don't actually want to do that because we're not following the council priority. We can always unrestrict these funds if we want because they're not restricted by money coming from the state for streets or roads or anything like that. It's a self-inflicted restriction. So I agree with keeping the money there that's meant for a council priority and using the GFAR. So I second that motion.
Vice Mayor Risto?
I don't share the thought that we shouldn't be using the money for the interim community center to fix up the interim community center. And, I don't know what we're going to be using the money for, but if we use half of it to get it in shape so that we can do further improvements and open up spaces that are unusable, that seems like that's forwarding the interim community center. So I don't know if I can support the motion. Or can we bifurcate it where we just, go ahead.
Councilmember Rennie?
I'll say I disagree because my understanding when we made this is I think matches Councilmember Hudes was we want to do improvements to the center, not just keep doing maintenance. And if we keep bleeding off all the money for maintenance items, which we've pretty much done. We've already spent a bunch of money on maintenance, and maybe we did a little bit of improvements. We'll end up with nothing, and then what was the point of our council priority? So I think Mr. Hudes is making a good motion in this case.
Yeah, I'll chime in that I have mixed feelings on this. When Councilmember Hudes and I worked on this, interim community center fund, my understanding of the dollars is that they would be for improvements to the space to make it, we have this grand and worthy idea of developing a new community center. And this, I think, was sort of done with the understanding that we're still about a decade away from that project potentially opening. And so how do we make our existing community center as inviting, welcoming, and usable as possible? And so, I think 2 years ago or a year ago, if this idea would have come up, I would have been a lot more opposed to it. The reason I'm sort of lukewarm to the idea is that I don't know. We don't have anything in our capital budget to speak of that I'm aware of that programs this money. And so I'm curious what the current, we had several conversations about this, and I had this vague idea that we can open up the front of the building some to make it more inviting and make it more of a community center. There were, a few small projects done. I really appreciate the use of some of the money to sort of jumpstart the nonprofit space, which I think has been good. But I don't know where we're envisioning the rest of the money going, and I don't want it to just sit in this fund for the next 10 years. And so, again, perhaps a bit outside of the scope of this conversation, but I'm curious what folks on the council think this money should be programmed for, because I'm not convinced it needs to be programmed for, deferred maintenance, but I do think it should be programmed for something. Yeah, Councilmember Rennie, then Hudis.
Okay, so, Mr. Hudis probably has a better, Councilmember Hudis probably has a better thought, but things like mold remediation is definitely not an improvement. That's a maintenance item. I mean, part of what was mentioned was we're going to have to start taking away parts of the building. We've already lost part of the building. We're going to start taking away parts of the building if we don't. That's maintenance to me. Things like, I don't know what the right answer is, but improve furniture so it's more comfortable, adding a snack room. I don't know what the right answers are, but these are things that are improvement. If it's adding, probably better ADA access is an improvement versus a maintenance item. Enhancing the large room so it can be used for more activities or in more comfortable activities, a better sliding divider, things like that are improvements versus making sure the building doesn't fall down. And I don't know what the right answer on improvements are, but making sure the building fall down is not enhancements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the topic of deferred maintenance did come up in 2023. We knew about these issues some time ago, and I very much appreciate staff coming forward and saying, here's the amount we need to have to fix this. And I'm very supportive of fixing the roof, and that's probably the biggest item that's in there. But it's fixing, it's not improving. And so we need to find, and across the board, we don't have really great process and funding for deferred maintenance that we have on all of our buildings. And we need to address, that issue. We can't keep taking from the general fund or taking from, Peter to pay Paul on this. We really need to come up with a comprehensive way to do that. But where we are right now is decrementing this would take away money from improvements that our residents would actually see, and we have the money elsewhere. So we would end up with, half of the money left for improvements, and there's no need to do that. And so, I think we should hang on to that money for improvements. I don't think we made a full force effort to really see what we could do with an interim community center. It kept getting smaller and smaller in scope down to, one little area. And I believe there was also an ADA bathroom, but we were able to receive a grant for that, so we didn't have to use some of the monies for that as well. So, but this is not the time, I think, to take that money away when we have other sources of funding.
Yep, Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I mean, you both make good points. I guess my concern is that if we take this money from the general fund, we have a lot of deferred maintenance, and so we're potentially taking it away from something else where we might need the money. I do have a question. If this maintenance work and this repair work triggers further ADA work that's not anticipated, like parking lot or something, then if it triggers ADA improvements, then would the funds be able to come from the interim community center, or would that come from somewhere else?
So in my mind, that's an improvement, and we probably need to put into, our hopper of looking at what other improvements we could actually do, because I think we really fell short. And while it may be a long time before we get a new community center, the community has articulated their needs pretty well in terms of the kind of uses that they would like to see. And I think we could come back and take a look at that list and see, well, what can we do while we're pursuing the process of a new community center. So I'm very much in favor of putting some effort into looking at improvements, including ADA improvements.
Yep. Town Manager.
Sounds like the council is split on how to use this fund. So my recommendation is we remove this in its totality, approve the remaining revenue and expenditures, and remove any change to the community center fund and any reallocation. If we're going to allocate general fund or GFAR or other money to some capital improvement, deferred maintenance, I don't want here at the dais to be making a decision solely on the basis of our future desires with the community center in its isolation, but be looking at the grander CIP. There are other issues that we may want to address. It may be a parking lot in that location, but we've also had the conversation about, are we throwing money into a facility that we're trying to improve that doesn't necessarily result in the long-term goal that we're trying to achieve for the services. And so I'd like to have a chance to talk with staff with regards to how do we want to prioritize CIP, and it may be something we push for the 26-27 budget instead.
Councilmember Hudis.
Can those repairs wait? I mean, I think some of those things, we knew about some of those things, 3-4 years ago. Or can we really push them off?
There's a lot of things that I wish we could do sooner. I mean, we've been sitting on this, I think in your words, for a couple of years that we've known about it. We'll figure out a way to do what needs to be done immediately, and if I have to come back, I will. But if we're going to spend roughly $500,000 on some type of capital improvement out of a GFAR or unrestricted source, I want to be able to consult with staff to decide, is that the best use of what we would put the first $500,000 towards? I know there are a lot of other significant concerns that we have, predominantly a couple of trees that are large scale that may fall on houses that I want to make sure we eliminate those risks if that's where we want to allocate funding.
Councilmember Badami.
Question for staff. So is the staff exposed to mold now where it could become a health issue?
Mold is prevalent in almost every single building. It doesn't necessarily mean it's hazardous and whatnot, but it is precautionary when you do receive a report that mold needs to be remediated, that you should remediate it, and that was the intent. But I think if we're now triggering funding sources changes, I may just decide to do mold remediation and take it from an existing internal budget with no additional allocation from the council and forego the additional capital improvements until the next year's budget.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rennie.
Yeah, I don't want to delay the repairs that I've talked about. Maybe the better option is just let it go as proposed by staff, and we'll worry about funds later on for capital improvements.
I have a question for staff, which is, we have this again large pot of money in the interim community center fund. Staff in the budget in mid-year here is recommending moving some of that money from, or I guess the project, and some of that money from tier 1 to from tier 2 to tier 1 in the CIP. Are there other improvements that you could anticipate making that would warrant it being in tier 1 that you're aware of, or anything that in that space that you've anticipated, sort of based on our conversations from the last couple of years with this money sitting there, or is it, or the greatest, or is it just deferred maintenance?
I think that's a bit of a challenging question to answer. There are a lot of needs for this building, including some work on the HVAC system. There was some plumbing work. So the roof needs to be repaired as part of, because that's the reason their mold has been identified. Windows need to be, so it's hard to know exactly where to draw the line, but we are quickly going to Councilmember Risto's point, run up against the need to make ADA improvements. If we put too much money into the building or aren't balanced with the improvements. And I think the mold and the roof clearly were not going to trigger ADA. We were still working to resolve the window question, but there's a balance to be had here in terms of what we do for that building. So yes, there are other needs. Yes, there are other improvements. But these were the ones that kind of rose to the top most immediately based on the work we have done.
Understood. Okay, thank you. I remember in the 2023 or 2024 budget, there was a slew of, I think it was something like $1.5 million of potential improvements or deferred maintenance in this building that the council, could sort of think about. And so I think, when we come back for budget, I think it'd be helpful to understand the variety of options for this space, both from a deferred maintenance standpoint and from potential improvements. Because the fear that I think the council brought up at the time when Councilmember Hudis and I came up with our, the big idea for this fund was that the money would just sit, and I was pretty confident it wouldn't, and now it sort of has. And so I don't want the money to continue sitting regardless of what we do with it. So I'm open on how this money could or should be spent, but it sounds like we have a variety of directions to go. The town manager's suggestion sort of makes sense to me that if we can pause on this and wait, if some of these repairs can wait until budget, then maybe we allocate the money then. I don't know. And maybe if there's, big ones, mold and roof that we could do now without triggering ADA, maybe that's, the way to go. So.
I can also offer a compromise based on the discussion. You could take the action that's recommended by the staff and add to that motion prior to the end of the fiscal year if projections demonstrate a fund balance surplus, that we first replenish the community center fund to its current balance. So therefore, we get the improvements done. It's coming from the community center fund. And if we end up to the good, which is what we project and hope, we're back to the full funding. But I would ask that we need to start having a conversation about the community center fund. I know Councilmember Rennie talked about it being our priority. It is not our strategic priority. I think it was the desire of the council at the time we were allocating ARPA to put it towards an enhancement of that facility in some fashion, with it to be determined. And I know there's been a number of discussions outside of the realm of the public about a future community center. And it just seems like there is this shadow process about a priority that the council may desire to put on the books at some future time. I think at this point, I'd rather get the improvements done, and I'd rather just replenish the resource, and then you determine later if it's something and how you want to allocate those fundings in the future. I don't have clear direction. I go back and I look at the 2023. Normally, when you're restricting a source from what you cannot use it for, we're explicit about that. I know there's intent behind that, but in my mind, bring in a room that's currently not able to be utilized because of a condition that is caused by the failure of the capital, to me, is a capital improvement. This is not just deferred maintenance. And besides, most of the maintenance internal to the building is an obligation of the leasee, not the town. Our obligation is the actual capital, which involves the roofs, the structures, the external that are causing the problem on the internal.
I think that's a good idea.
You have a motion on the table, unless the motion maker wants to withdraw it.
No, I'd like to see where the motion goes. I understand that there are other ways to achieve this goal, but I think that I would like to see, number one, moving forward on the repairs, the deferred maintenance, the items that are here. They came into this because they were a priority, not because we happen to have funds available. We happen to have funds available elsewhere, and I'd like to see us move forward and take care of the issues. And I think we have the means to take care of them, at the same time to come back later to look at how we might come up with some better improvements for that community center that our community needs so badly. So I'm not, I'd like to just see where this motion plays out.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Well, if I may, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
You, of course, welcome to.
Okay, so I move to authorize the budget adjustments of $3,581.88 in estimated revenues and $1,350,141 in increased expenses as recommended in the mid-year budget report, with the caveat that up to the amount stated could be used for the capital improvements / remediation of the community center. And if we do come out ahead at the end of the year, that money be replenished into the interim community center fund as described by the town manager earlier, if I'm stating it correctly.
So let me repeat this back and tell me it's correct. The motion is to authorize staff, the staff recommendation on both revenue and expenditures presented in the mid-year report, and to authorize as presented, and as we incur its surplus by the end of the year, to replenish the community center fund up to the stated amount current balance in the budget.
Correct.
Councilmember Rennie.
I second the last motion, but I'll second this one.
All right. I'll just chime in that I'm in philosophical alignment with Councilmember Hudis on this generally, but I think this is a good compromise, and staff's concern about this perhaps not being the highest and best use for our GFAR is concerning. And so I think this is a good compromise, but I'm willing to hear everybody's thoughts. Yes, Councilmember Badami.
So I would be interested in supporting staff's recommendation with the wording provided by the town manager as a compromise.
Councilmember Rennie, then Hudis.
And I actually was kind of surprised when the town manager said that improvements to the building was not our strategic priorities, because it's been kind of a council priority to do that. And I specifically brought our goals, core goals and strategic priorities with me tonight to keep referring to. And it's correct. It's not really there. There's a core goal of quality public infrastructure, and I think that's what the town manager's most worried about. We've got a lot of public infrastructure to keep at a quality level. So I understand his comments better after thinking through and re-looking at these, and so that's why I was willing to kind of change to the second motion and second it and support it.
Councilmember Hudis.
So my question is, when would we be able to take up this question about replenishing the fund?
Based on the motion on the table, I would take that as a directive for the budget, and prior to the end of June 30th, program an additional $430 $430,000 in change into the budget to the extent that the surplus that we have at the end of the year exceeds that $430,000 number.
So when would that be considered?
That prior to fiscal year end.
Okay.
I would imagine, once the administrative services director can project what our potential surplus would be at the end of the year, making that budgetary change before the end of the fiscal year, so that when the ACFR is produced, the ACFR will still demonstrate an $800 and something thousand balance in the community center fund.
Yeah, given that timing and the urgency of starting the repairs, I can support the motion.
Okay, great. I just want to throw in two last pieces for me. One is I don't think it needs to be in the motion, but I just want to be clear that I would really appreciate hearing what our options for improvements are to the community center and the rest of this funding when we come back for budget. And then this is, again, silly, not totally part of the motion, but I'm very curious how the Frontier deal might affect the town of Los Gatos, because I think that really those are two key locations. And so I think that's worth considering as we enter budget.
Let me speak a little bit to, I love the conversation. I wasn't here for the 2023. I think we need more in-depth conversation regarding this topic, because based on the motion, what was intended to occur prior to the 2024 year was a discussion of the improvements that needed to occur. I don't know if those have occurred, and if they did occur, obviously the improvements did not occur in the building outside of some HVAC improvements. And so I think that's a larger conversation, because the direction was to have a broader input about the improvements associated with that building. The only thing I've seen come from that has been work being done towards a future community center, but not necessarily what improvements need to go into the existing one.
I think the assistant town manager wanted to chime in, and then I think Councilmember Hudis and I can also jump in on. We wrote a memo that was to this effect.
Thank you, Katie Nemura, Assistant Town Manager. In terms of, I think along the lines of some of the conversation tonight, there was a focus more on not the maintenance aspect, but what are the actual improvements. There was a whole community process done, input from CHSSC and the council, and there were several items selected to move forward with, and along with the notion that, we don't want to invest so much in a building that might get redone, possibly, if that is the will. There were certain things that, granted, they were smaller dollar items. They were, the rotational partner space, the large hall divider, improving some of the safety lighting, things of that nature. And so, but it wasn't to your point, it wasn't the maintenance discussion. We did have a table and a list of things that needed to be done, but those were not taken up at that time.
So I'll just chime in. I think perhaps then that, in the next month or two, it could be worth having a discussion on that funding specifically and the adult recreation center more generally, in light of all of this. Yeah, Vice Mayor Stowe.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. I'm really supportive of this present adult community center that we have, and I think that there are things we can do to improve it, but until we get the basic underpinnings of it, remediate the mold, get the roof, fix it up so that any future additions we decide are worth doing to this building make sense. And so, I think if we get I hate to see money sitting there when we've got a strong need and not spend it there. And then if we have extra money and we can replenish the fund, I will be very eager to see how we can improve this present community center that we have in the interim.
I'm going to try to tie this back into the mid-year. There's only $800,000. That is, I think, to do right by that building, that is not sufficient. So in 2023 numbers, just the facility assessment estimate over the total 25 years from that report is in excess of $2 million. And when you look at that, some of the repairs we're contemplating today in the midterm aren't in that report. When we start to look at the improvements, if the council at some future time considers a new community center, that time window is significant. It's not going to happen in the next 3 years. And so if we're looking at improvements in the current community center, We have to contemplate if there are going to be significant improvements, which it sounds like historically we've been trying not to make anything significant from a change in service provision. Then we're looking at potential debt financing as the best alternative. And if we're looking at debt financing, we need to look at that building from the perspective of it's a community center today. And if a new community center is built and we choose that to be the new community center, that whatever improvements we do today or over the next few years have to sustain that building in some alternate use, or else it doesn't justify making significant improvements to it. And you get back to the quandary that the mayor raised about, I don't want to just be sitting on a pot of money hoping to make improvements, but we never get to actually making the improvements. Well, we're in the situation that you may not make the improvements because you're looking at an alternate path. So how do you balance those two is a question the council has to grapple with.
Agreed, and I would just say I think it's worth grappling with at some point. I think it's worth having the discussion. So, yes.
I just wanted to clarify the motion for the record. The original motion referred to a description by the town manager, and the town manager clarified, and there was agreement. So I just wanted to clarify the exact wording of the motion. I have something that I think is accurate that I could put on display, if that's helpful.
Sure. And this is the substitute motion, correct? The substitute
motion, correct.
Please go ahead. We always benefit from the motion being displayed.
We have dollar signs now. Okay. I believe that is what I stated, if the numbers are right.
I think the number...
Oh, no, it's the numbers are not right. It should be $3,581,888 for the first one. And then the second number is correct. Don't you wish we had $3 billion in estimated revenues? Need to get rid of those zeros. Okay. Whoops. I believe that is exactly what my motion is. Okay.
Seconder?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Okay. Are we all on the same page? Any final questions? Then I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Well done. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, great. That was our last item of the evening, so we will move to council matters. I'll begin with Councilmember Rennie.
So the one item I have to report on was I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy board meeting since our last council meeting. Last regularly scheduled council meeting. Items of interest, we did appoint members to our committees, and Councilmember Risto as an alternate was appointed to the Finance Committee. We also approved a change, so it may be of interest, the SB 707 changes the Brown Act requirements for multi-jurisdictional, and there are now some options that if you're more than 20 miles away, you don't have to put a notice up at your location, although you need to be noticed on the agenda, which is quite helpful for people traveling And it also, if for some reason they are traveling and the meeting goes off, their location goes off, it's not a public location, and so the meeting can continue. I think we talked about their interpretation is it had to stop, but based on the new law now it doesn't. I think our attorney interpreted differently for our own meetings, but I thought I would just mention that we adopted those changes that SB 707 allowed us into our multi-jurisdictional meetings.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudis.
So I had a number of meetings. First, I met with John Cowan of El Camino Health and discussed health services in Los Gatos, and had a long conversation about aging in place and how those kind of services might be provided along a number of lines similar to the village concept. I met with the West Valley service providers. Actually, that was at West Valley Community Services Building, and had a very good review of services for seniors that were presented there. I attended a memorial for Larry Arzi, who on the 12th, who was one of our leading and brilliant business people from Los Gatos Porch, and a very strong member of our community, and very touching memorial service for him. Then I had a meeting of the Los Gatos Thrives Foundation Executive Committee. And then I wanted to just make a comment about last council meeting that we had, the last regular council meeting. I had a chance to listen to the tape of our last council meeting, and I'd like to apologize to my fellow council members about some remarks that I made when the last item of the evening came up regarding approval of the North 40 minutes. I think I was out of line in attributing motivation. I think I said enthusiasm for the North 40 development to some of the council members about the reasons for their vote concerning the accuracy of the minutes of that meeting. I realize that it's never a good or civil practice to assume that you know the motivation of why somebody votes in a way that you cannot understand, and I regret the remarks that I made at that moment and apologize to the council for that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudis. Let's see, I attended the Finance Commission meeting last Monday, which is part of the reason why I had no questions tonight, but I am thankful that my fellow council members brought up a number of excellent questions on the last item. On the 11th, Councilmember Badami and I attended Conceptual Design Advisory Committee meeting where there's a proposed assisted living facility potentially on the very northern edge of the North 40 next to the freeway. On the 12th, I attended the VTA Policy Advisory Committee where we got an update on the Sunnyvale Peary Park shuttle. So in Sunnyvale, they've got a shuttle that is free from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., goes around certain, it's on demand, and it goes around certain areas of Sunnyvale. And it led to a discussion of us probably agendizing in the near future a discussion with VTA about all the different micro-mobility shuttles in a variety of cities across Santa Clara County, so we can sort of understand what kind of last-mile solutions are coming forward, what our community is doing, and how do they interface with VTA, and how can Los Gatos do something like that, maybe? So anyway, good discussion coming up. And then, let's see, I don't need to go into all that. And then later, I attended the Cities Association Legislative Action Committee, although Councilmember Moore stood in for me for part of that because I was still at the PAC meeting. And then on the 15th, I, in the place of the mayor, attended the History Club donor brick garden dedication. So in front of the History Club, there's kind of a garden area with the signage, and there's bricks that people can purchase to help fund the clubhouse capital improvements. And it's a beautiful building that's really nice for receptions, celebrations. I met a couple that had their wedding reception there 20 years ago, and they did have a beautiful party there. So if you're interested in helping fund that, at the Los Gatos History Club website, there is the donor brick form, and for $250, you can help support this and get your name on there.
On February 5th, I participated in a board meeting of the West Valley Stormwater Authority, and later that same day, I also participated in a meeting of the West Valley Solid Waste Management Authority. On February 11th, along with the Vice Mayor, I participated in a meeting at the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee. And on the 15th, I participated in the dedication ceremony at the History Club of Los Gatos, along with the Vice Mayor, where she delivered a very thoughtful speech in support of the club that resonated quite well with the attendees.
Great. And I had a number of meetings. I participated in roundtables with West Valley leaders, both with Supervisor Abe Koga and Congressman Sam Liccardo. It's great that our regional leaders are taking the West Valley seriously. I think that hasn't always necessarily been the case. So that's welcomed, and they seem to be listening well to our concerns. Attended the Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action Awards, where I was honored to present an award to one of our Los Gatos High School students who has been involved in lots of great climate advocacy work. I met with the leaders of the St. Vincent de Paul Society to discuss homelessness services in Los Gatos, among a variety of things. And we're very, very fortunate to have such a great group of leaders that are so dedicated to our community. I attended a number of VTA meetings, including meeting with the General Counsel of VTA and some of the folks there. I will say, we are very fortunate to have a lot less zeros on some of our lawsuits than VTA does. The West Valley Sanitation District met a few times, and we have, after a long process, selected Tim Keyser, who is the current city manager of Grass Valley, to be the new executive for the West Valley Sanitation District. He'll begin at the end of March, which is great because he has to relocate here, so glad to have him starting soon. And I think that's a very good thing for the district. The district has been without an executive for almost a year, and so it's a very good thing. And lastly, I attended the Cities Association board meeting. A lot of interesting discussions, but I'll just highlight that the Cities Association, I think intelligently this year, selected just 3 key priorities that I think they will be able to make progress on, which are emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness. Number 2 is e-bike, e-motorcycle safety. Some cities claim to not have this as much of an issue as we do, but I think it's definitely spread, and so I'm glad that that's something that the Cities Association is going to be taking a look at. And the third is public safety, including flock cameras and privacy, which is going to be an interesting issue for the Cities Association to tackle because there's a lot of different perspectives on that topic, and so we'll see where that goes. Great. I will turn now to the town manager and town attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one update regarding our residential alarm ordinance. Since the adoption of the ordinance in September of 2025, the town has received feedback from residents regarding the registration fee and aspects of the online registration program. In response, the police department conducted a review of the program. As a result of that review, the residential alarm registration fee will be waived through June 30th, 2026. Residents are still required to register their alarms. However, it will be done for free through the end of the fiscal year. And those who have already paid the fee will receive a credit towards their 2027 renewal. Before any future fee is considered, the town will complete a full cost analysis to ensure the fee reflects only the actual cost of administering the program. So there is a potential that that fee may be subject to change. The online registration process has been simplified. A frequently asked questions has been posted to the town's website, and a dedicated phone number and email have been established to assist residents who may have questions. Lastly, the police department will continue to monitor the program and provide updates to the council as needed. We fully understand that when we implement a new program, they don't necessarily all go super smooth, but we are very thankful that when we do identify issues, that we make the changes necessary to make it more convenient for our residents. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Do we have any updates from the town attorney?
There are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.